Hey there, story lovers. Welcome to Wingman Joker, where every story comes to life. Dive into captivating tales that will thrill, inspire, and entertain. If you enjoy the journey, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to join the adventure. Chapter 341, Two Girls Against the World. 7 days after the events of Haruna challenging Genji, and only a few hours after Victor left to look for Office. Two beings completely covered in black were running through the narrow alleys of the city of Tokyo, Japan. The moon in the sky was red, and a dangerous mood hovered around. There they are, hearing someone's voice. Quick, surround them. The being who was wearing the Oni mask clicked its tongue in annoyance. Fox. The being with the fox mask nodded its head slightly, and lightly touched Ona's shoulder. The Oni disappeared and appeared on top of the men who were chasing them, grabbing the two deagles that were holstered behind her, and pointing at the beings. Bang, bang, she fired twice, aiming at the individuals in the heads. The first shot instantly killed an individual, while the second the man defended with his arm, which had grown hard in scales of a red hue. Tisk. The Oni kicked the wall behind her to build momentum towards the man. Do not underestimate me. The man roared as his human appearance was deformed, and soon he took the form of a 7-foot monster that had red scales and horns protruding from its head. He punched towards the golden-eyed Oni, but he just hit the black particles that were lingering in the air. I wasn't. Feeling the cold of the metal on the back of its head, the monster started to sweat. Why? Bang! Brain and blood painted on the floor. A silence fell around them, and that silence was broken by the sound of footsteps and screams. I heard a shot, over here. Fuck, they're like cockroaches. The Oni spoke in an annoyed tone as she began to run again with her accomplice. Demons, werewolves, servants of vampires, hunters, yokai, it seemed that the whole world was after this girl. Was her being the daughter of a count that important? Quote. The Ona's companion looked at her in silence, and after a few moments she spoke. Quote. I'm sorry, nay, Oni. Quote. The Oni glanced back, and saw her mate's sad red eyes. This is not your fault. She turned her face forward and continued. They are hunting you because you are the daughter of an important person. Quote. But if I didn't exist, you wouldn't be going through this. The child is not to blame for what their parents did or represent. Quote. At least it was something someone told me in the past. She laughed lightly, jumping past some garbage cans, and into another alley, she continued. Quote. At first, I didn't believe him, but as time passed, and as I traveled around the world, I realized that he was correct. She pulled the gun from her holster, and pointed it up. Bang! A body with its head exploded and fell to the ground. The body slowly lost its human form, and soon a pointy-eared monster with large tails and blue fur replaced it. Yokai this time, huh? The Oni only glanced at him as she ran, then turned the corner followed by her companion. So you don't have to feel guilty. Quote. Her accomplice opened her eyes a little in surprise, and then her eyes took on a gentle expression. None of this is your fault. Get down. The Oni pulled her companion's hand, and threw her to the ground, only for something to pass by, spinning at high speed. Slash slash. The two heard the noise of things being shredded at high speed, and when they looked up, they saw that everything in a straight line had been eviscerated. Just surrender, we will treat you well. Tisk. AkaIchi. Oni aimed her deagle up and fired. The bullets ricochet off the blades of the monster that looked like a 2-meter-long weasel with a tail of blades. Give up, we don't want to hurt you if possible. Another weasel appeared in front of the Oni. They were surrounded. The Oni let go of her partner's hand, and pulled the other deagle from her holster. That attack you sent our way says otherwise. Quote. Like I said, if possible. The weasel flashed a smile full of sharp teeth. Give up, Nero, you can't run away forever. The other weasel spoke. Quote. How do you know my name? Japan is a small place, there are ears everywhere. The weasel that defended Nero's bullets spoke up. Quote. And there are people who sell information to anyone who is interested. The two weasels started pacing back and forth, they were looking for an opportunity to act. Quote. Fucking witches. Nero's hands gripped more tightly. It didn't take a genius to understand who sold the information. Give up. Never. I see, don't cry about losing a leg or two, later. The weasels, first stood on end, and the wind began to circle around them. They leapt into the air, and attacked with their tails. The action sent two wind blades flying towards the girls. Nero braced herself, but when she blinked her eyes, she saw that she was on top of a tall building. Quote. Fox. Yes. Why did you take so long? I've never used my power so frequently. A trail of blood left Fox's nose. She wiped her nose with her clothes, and I've never used my power on anyone else. She got this idea when she saw that black-haired nine-tailed fox do it. Feeling a sense of familiarity with that fox, she thought that maybe she could do it too. And with just a few tries, she was able to replicate what she saw. If Haruna knew about this story, she would scream, bullshit. But that was how beings that had the blood of a progenitor were, they learned fast. Mainly Ophis, who had 50% of Vlad's blood inside her. But that power didn't come without consequences. That power caused a lot of stress on her body that wasn't developed yet. Which was quite predictable. Ophis had never used her power as actively as she did now, and she had also never used her power on anyone other than herself. Quote. Let's rest. Nero said. She wasn't good at comforting people or saying nice words, thus, this was her way of showing that she cared. She walked to a spot and leaned against it while keeping her senses alert. Thanks. Nero just nodded. Should I have used her power less? But I didn't know that vampires could get tired using their powers. That man never seemed to get tired, and being his daughter, shouldn't she be the same? Single quote. Nero idiot. She is a child. Of course she has no resistance when using her powers. Her regeneration is also not like that man, and they don't have the same willpower. Single quote. Now, I'm feeling bad. Should I have asked her to use her power less? But if she didn't use her power, we would have died many times over. She looked at the moon, which at some point had turned white again, and sighed. Why is he taking so long? This is not like him. For the man who'd said he would burn the world down if he had to protect his family, he seems very neglectful of this matter. It's been 1 week. Nero was getting a headache from thinking so much. She had several complaints and frustrations that she was holding back. After all, it wasn't fair for her to vent to Ophis. She was just a child, and Nero knew it. She wasn't an idiot to take out her frustrations on a child. When Fox was about to take off his mask, Nero suddenly spoke. Do not do it. Nero spoke. We can never know who is watching us. Oh. Understanding that it was important to keep her identity a secret, Fox nodded and sat down on the floor. These 7 days that passed were marked by intense escapes. The first 2 days were all at peace. Ophis stayed with Nero and waited for someone to come and get her, and Nero took care of Ophis. Thinking she was the daughter of someone who took care of her in the past. But everything started to change on the 3rd day when a rumor began to circulate in the supernatural world of Japan. The daughter of a big shot from Nightingale is here, and she is unprotected. Hand-drawn photos were being distributed in Japan's underworld. The photo had 2 beings of similar heights wearing a completely black outfit. The first onlookers who came towards the group ended up dying at the hands of Nero, and that made them more curious. This incident caught the attention of several supernatural beings, but for 2 days, all these small fish were killed. The noble vampires of Nightingale were targets of various supernatural beings. There were several reasons for this. Revenge. After all, younger vampires, when they leave Nightingale, think that Earth is a playground for them. Jealousy. This one is more for vampires who couldn't enter Nightingale or who had been driven out of the Promised Land. Nightingale was a haven for vampires. They could live in peace, and didn't have to worry about threats. Curiosity. This was the one that attracted the most people. Several groups were curious to know who Big Shot's daughter was. Maybe it's the daughter of someone I know. Perhaps it is the daughter of someone important. Everyone knew that the Big Shots, that is, the children of noble vampires who had relations with the clan of vampire counts, were filthy rich, and they believed this could be an opportunity to make money. And those beings that came after the group were all handled by Nero. She ran into a new group every 4 and 6 hours, and she dealt with them as usual. A bullet to the head. But it wasn't until the 5th day that everything got worse. A new rumor began to circulate. A blood relative of the king of vampires is in Japan. With the recent rumor, plus this rumor, everyone thought that this rumor was talking about these 2 beings. Given the size of the photo, everyone thought it was one of the vampire king's youngest children. And the only child the vampire king had that was that small was Ophis Teps, the child who was considered the most beautiful flower in Nightingale. And like moths drawn towards the flame, all supernatural beings present in Japan went towards Tokyo in search of the daughter of the king of vampires. The offensives that used to happen every 4 or 6 hours, started happening every hour, and that time interval was getting shorter with each passing day. And on the 7th day, they were swarming every minute. Each of these beings had their own motivation. The most stubborn were the vampires from Japan that Mizuki almost exterminated. They were making vampire servants with the sole intention of throwing them in the direction of the girls. But how could mere newly created slave vampires be better than someone who had always been fighting for her life? Nero annihilated them, and that drew even more attention. With each being that Nero killed, the supernaturals of Japan grew more and more curious about the guardian of the daughter of the king of vampires. The witches saw an opportunity to do business, and tried to discover the identity of the two beings at any cost. But after all their efforts, they only managed to learn the name of one of the individuals. Nero. And with just that name leaked out, another group got involved, the hunters and the werewolves. Unlike General Leonardo and his minions who came here to deal with the demons, the Inquisition sent a newly promoted commander, who was promoted when Commander Carlos died fighting the new vampire count, August, and his companion Sylvie. They were the new recruits commanding General James's personal army. What was strange was that they came in a much smaller group than General Leonardo. So far, no one knew why the werewolves took an interest in this particular subject. But this incident was definitely getting a lot more attention than it should. A general, and a commander of the Inquisition. Witches used spells and their contacts to hunt for information to sell more dearly to select groups. The remaining noble vampires of Japan were acting like psychopaths, and using all their resources to capture the girls. Werewolves, whose goals were unknown. Several groups of yokai chasing the girls as if they had been ordered by someone. Japan was a mess all because of these two girls. Where these two girls passed, as if it were the eye of a hurricane, these groups faced each other and end up in death. 5 minutes passed, and Nero smelled a different scent in the air. It was only for a few seconds, but she definitely felt it. She moved away from where she was, and appeared in front of Ophis. Quote. Ophis looked at Nero with a curious look. Rest time is over, she spoke as she looked around, her eyes glowing gold for a few seconds. And then she pointed to the water tank with her two deagle. Quote. Your senses are very good, child. Someone appeared on top of the water tank. A Nurari-yon, Nero spoke when she saw a small creature that had a big head. Chapter 342, She is not a disease. A Nurari-yon, Nero spoke when she saw a small creature that had a big head. For a foreigner, you sure know a lot about yokai. I have to know all I can about what kind of hole I call home. Nero spoke in disdain. That's a good mindset. The creature nodded in agreement. For a supernatural being, caution never hurt anyone. Now, what are you going to do? He asked in a bored voice. He knew she wouldn't give up. After all, those weren't the eyes of someone who would give up. Kill you, and move on. That is impossible. He made a gesture with his hand, and as if an illusion was breaking around them, several beings started to appear. Werewolves, vampires, and all sorts of strange creatures in various forms that are yokai. Kekaki, Nura, your power is useful as always. A spider yokai spoke. Master sent for them. A vampire spoke with empty eyes. Quote. A werewolf looked at Nero silently. He clicked the button in his pocket, and a signal was sent to his pack and the hunters. Quote. This is a rare sight. I never thought I would see these groups together. We have taken a temporary break from our conflict. After all, our time is running out. He tried to hide it, but Nero could see he was in a hurry. Nero looked around, and she couldn't help but vent some of her frustrations. Tisk, all this because of a count's daughter. A silence fell around, even the bloodthirsty yokai stopped at such nonsense. Quote. Don't tell me you don't know who she is. Nura asked. Of course I know who she is. Nero spoke in a convincing tone. Quote. PFF'd. Ha. The creature laughed very loudly. He seemed to find something amusing. Bang. Nero took advantage of him letting his guard down and shot the creature in the head, but the bullet just passed through the creature as if it didn't exist. Tisk, that annoying skill of yours. She muttered in annoyance, and then she spoke in a low voice. Fox, your skill. Quote. I still can't, but I can try. When Ophis started using her ability, blood began to flow from her eyes and nose. Little girl, you better stop using that skill, or you'll die. You don't have Yuki. Nura appeared near Ophis. Bang! The bullet passed through the creature's body, and it disappeared again. Tisk! Ophis stopped using her ability and wiped her blood on her clothes. Little tears threatened to fall from her face, but she did her best not to cry. She had never felt pain like this before in her life. That smell. As expected, a man's voice resounded on the spot, and soon he appeared in close proximity to the creature. What are you waiting for? Get them. Everyone will have their share. A man of average height wearing a suit suddenly appeared and ordered. He was quite impatient. Roar. The first to attack were the beast yokai, but they quickly got their heads pierced by a bullet. Moron. Next up was the one man who was partially transformed. He was a werewolf. You will come back to us, little mouse. Quote exclamation mark. Quote. Nero opened her eyes wide when she heard that word, and soon memories she didn't want to remember popped into her head, and those memories filled her with rage. That is not my name. Bang. The man defended with his hand. Ordinary bullets will not pass through my skin. But soon he started screaming. AHHHHHHHHGGGGG. He looked at his arm, and saw that his arm began to convulse and melt. Wolfsbane. Realizing what it was, he quickly cut the arm off. Quote. Where did you get it? He stopped talking when he felt a weight on his shoulders, and the feel of the barrel of the gun at the back of his head. Ask your bitch of a mother in hell, she must know. I sent her there after all. Bang. A bullet went through the wolf's head, and just like the previous soldiers, pieces of the brain were thrown around. A silence fell around. Nero turned and looked at the other beings with her eyes glowing gold. Next. Quote. Quote. Everyone was choking for a few seconds when they felt the girl's pressure. This was not something a girl her age should have. Kill her. The vampire ordered. ROOOOOOOOOAR. Back to Victor. 3 hours passed. Victor, who had just scanned all of North America, decided he was going to Europe next when he suddenly felt his phone ring. Picking up the phone, he saw Ruby's name, and answered the phone. Darling, go to Japan now. Okay. Victor didn't question his wife. Rumble, rumble. Victor created an ice shelf in the air and kicked against it to launch himself. Boom, boom, boom. Several sounds of air cracking were heard, and soon Victor disappeared, and no sound was heard, just the noise of lightning that the clouds were making. Are you sure she's in Japan? Sasha asked. Yes, my spies at the Inquisition informed me of this, and my witches confirmed it. Ruby took a hand-drawn photo for the group. What is that? Violet questions. That's Ophis, and a girl named Nero. Ruby responds. Quote. Nero, that little girl that Victor helped in Greece. Violet asked. She had heard everything that Victor went through in those 1 year and 6 months that he was away, and during the events that provoked a friction with the demons of Belial, Nero was at the center of it all. Yes, and she's also a natural hybrid. Quote. Quote. Hilda's eyes fluttered a little when she heard about a hybrid. Are you okay with contacting a hybrid? Quote. Don't treat her like a disease. Ruby looked at Hilda with her eyes glowing blood red. She does not deserve it. Ruby had never personally contacted Nero, but from what she'd heard from Victor, Nero's circumstances hit her heart deeply. A child shouldn't suffer this just because she was born in a special way. That was not my intention. Hilda spoke in a neutral tone. It's just that hybrids. She tried to continue but she was interrupted by Ruby, saying, the child born of a noble vampire and a werewolf is not a danger to vampire society as these idiotic myths say. She is just a child who has faulty genes. Quote. Quote. I can spend hours here explaining to you about the genetic problems caused by 2 completely different races that decided to breed. Infertility, anemia, short life expectancy, body weakness, blood problems, brain disorders that if left untreated can cause Alzheimer's. This is just one of the examples. The same kind of problems can be found in animals that have bred with members that don't have the same gene base as their own breed. The reason that all of humanity could breed with each other despite having different ethnicities was all because its base was still human. The core genetic code of this being's existence was still human. And that didn't apply to vampires and werewolves. The core genetic code of noble vampires was totally different from a werewolf. They are 2 completely different species. Even a vampire slave is not equal to a vampire noble. They may be similar but they are not. Vampires noble are a fully fledged species, they can procreate and have children, but a slave vampire cannot do that. After all, they're dead, they're just a ghoul with better control. A noble vampire's bite does not change a being's core genetic code. Only one creature in every supernatural race could rewrite an individual's genetic code. And those creatures are the progenitors. Blood and souls are the progenitors, currency. This phrase implied what kind of being a progenitor is. When a progenitor decides to turn someone into a vampire, no matter what humanoid species you are, your genetic code will be rewritten to 99.99% in likeness of noble vampires, and all that will be left will be just 00.01% of the genes of the previous race that the humanoid was. And this 00.01% stored the external appearance of the being, and what kind of being it was in the past. It is a trace in the genetic code that cannot be erased even by the progenitor itself. Ruby believed that progenitors aren't limited to physical beings either. She hypothesized this because she knew there were stories that Sasha's grandmother was a lightning spirit. It's not just the blood, but the soul too. Not to mention the fact that her husband had abilities that affected a being's soul. My husband's bite can change everything in a living being. Single quote. But I don't have enough evidence to come to a conclusion. She thought to herself. Victor's newfound power. It's like she said. It's too soon, she needed more data. But even with only what she'd learned from studying her husband, and the maids he'd raised, Ruby felt the true terror of the existences known as a progenitors. After all, if a progenitor was thrown onto a planet that had no supernatural beings and that planet's race was humanoid, it was only a matter of time before the progenitor ruled over that world. Oh, I rambled on too much. Now, when a noble vampire has a child with a werewolf, it's the same thing as if a dog tried to have a child with a cat. The genetic basis is completely different, and when the product of these two races are born, they are born with various genetic problems. And because these genes are unstable, which is dangerous, they are basically a new species, and when that new species comes in contact with bacteria and germs from the outside world, their body reacts differently than their mother and father species. This is also one of the reasons why the blood of natural hybrids was quite lethal if administered correctly. Quote. Ruby sighed inwardly as all these thoughts popped into her head. She was going to try to explain the result of her experiments and discoveries to Hilda, but I could explain everything to you, I could detail every study I've done, but you'd never understand. After all, you can't convince someone who is stuck in their bigoted mindset and refuses to listen. Yes, not worth it. In the measly 2 seconds every thought popped into her head, it only took half that time for her to decide. It wasn't worth it. Therefore, she immediately erased that thought from her head. Quote. Are you calling me stupid? Hilda narrowed her eyes dangerously. I didn't say that, I said you're a bigoted old woman. She reiterated herself. Quote. Veins bulged in Hilda's head. Hot air started to leave Hilda's body, and cold air started to leave Ruby's body. They seemed to be about ready to clash at any moment. Okay, that's enough. This is no time to fight between us. Violet tapped the table as she spoke. Quote. I've never seen you so defensive about something, Ruby. Sasha spoke up. I just don't like this mentality of accepting everything without any evidence. It's because of thoughts like hers that kids like Nero suffer through what they do. She turned her face away. She would never admit that she didn't like what Hilda said. And Sasha and Violet knew it. It seems that she has a special affection for this girl called Nero. Violet thought. She's no monster, she's just a kid who needs help. Ruby removed her hair clip, and tossed her hair back while walking towards the exit. I hope that this time, she will come with us. My darling said he'd invited her to live with us, but she refused. Which is not surprising, she will hardly ever be able to trust a person 100% in her life again. Where are you going? Violet asked curiously. Our husband is going to Japan, and Officer Nero could be hurt. If that happens, just like my mother's case, a country will disappear from the map. But unlike that time, there are gods in that country. Sasha's face darkened as she remembered that detail. Correct, my husband may be powerful, but not even he can fight over 1 million gods alone. Ruby took her phone and opened her contact list, so I'll call for backup, just in case he needs it. Due to Victor's new temper, she had some doubts as to what kind of action would proceed, but she had enough confidence in her understanding of Victor. She trusted her instincts on what she believed the course of action the man who lived by the phrase eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, blood for blood, would be. No matter how much he changes, he's still Victor. He'll still get angry when he sees someone close to him hurt. He'll return the favor 100 times over to everyone responsible, and the trigger alone is enough to cause catastrophes. Daughter. Quote. The faces of everyone in the room darkened when they heard the woman's voice, not just Victor, but Scathach too. Mother, we have a problem. Chapter 343, Crimson Nightmare. Bang, bang, bang. Sounds of gunshots and screams resounded from atop a building, and in the midst of those screams and gunshots was a girl with golden eyes. Less than a few minutes had passed, and everyone could see several dead bodies near the girl. Nero. Ophis bit her lip when she saw the girl's condition. Parts of her clothing were torn, and claw marks could be seen on her chest, and behind her, she was bleeding but was acting like it was no problem. Ophis was feeling quite useless now since she had tried to use her power several times, but it didn't work, and she only harmed herself. And the longer she took to use her powers, the more Nero suffered. No more. She stopped in front of Ophis again while breathing heavily. An awkward silence fell as the lesser supernatural beings were looking at Nero with faint indications of fear running through their eyes. They were afraid of her persistence. They had never seen anyone like that before. Looking at her wounds, Nero clicks her tongue in annoyance. If she didn't have a cursed race, those little cuts would be completely regenerated by now. This girl, doesn't she reload her gun? Is this shit infinite? The Japanese vampire thought in irritation, and with slight interest, he wanted to know what the problem was with those deagle. Kuroki, you are being embarrassed. Nero wasted no time in making fun of the man. Shut up. Kuroki, the vampire, looked at the yokai. Can't you do something? With your technique, it should be easily resolved. Believe me, I already tried, but this girl's senses are very good, and she can see through my illusions easily. Tisk, useless. Nero, who was breathing heavily, looked around with a gaze glowing gold. When she takes a step forward, some beings take a step opposite her. She flashed a smile. If you don't see it, I. Before she could finish, she quickly tried to defend herself against something but failed. Ah! Nero screams in pain and watches helplessly as both of her arms are cut off. Nero, back off. She spoke with difficulty as she held the pain from her body. She didn't even need to look at the wound to understand what kind of wound she had received. That nagging pain as if thousands of ants were gnawing at her flesh, she knew all too well. Hunters. That nasty energy. August, what are you doing? Nero asked with visible irritation. Accelerating the process, you are taking too long. A tall man with long white hair and a face with two scars appeared behind Ophis and Nero. He was wearing a kind of priest's outfit that was quite easy to move around in, and in his hand, he was holding two golden swords of pure energy. Just as promised, you will have a part of the king's daughter. By the time he finished speaking, in the measly time of a few seconds, Nero felt a bad feeling approaching. Oh Ophis, before she could warn Ophis, she saw Ophis, head separated from her body. Ophis, eyes widened widely at this unexpected pain, tears fell from her face, her eyes glowed blood red, and suddenly. Ah! A demonic scream of pain came from the little girl's mouth. Ah! All the supernaturals present put their hands to their ears as they felt their existence tremble slightly in fear at such a cry. Fast, shut her up. Nero called out to August, who was closer. August, who was closest, along with Nero, just screamed. Like the other supernatural beings, their senses were quite heightened, and this scream coming from very close stuns them both. Oh Ophis! Nero slowly fell into the world of unconsciousness as she looked at Ophis, head which was screaming in pain. She just couldn't stand up anymore. The only thing she regretted now was not protecting her, the daughter of her benefactor, properly. At least I'll die trying to protect someone, not a dying death in some alley. When her upper body fell to the ground, she saw something in the sky. The old white moon had disappeared, and stormy weather had formed around her in the blink of an eye. Novel rumble, rumble. Coming with a crash of lightning, a tall man appeared in the midst of all the supernaturals. Looking at the expression on the man who could freeze even the most dangerous of demons, Nero flashed a small smile. You took too long, idiot. She slowly closed her eyes and fell unconscious. Alucard. Nero and Kuroki gulped when they saw the man standing in front of them. Of all vampires, that damn psychopath had to come. The two of them couldn't move, as the blood pressure that was emanating from his body was just too frightening. Their bodies weren't obeying them. They felt like the world was crashing down on top of them, and they were desperately trying to hold on to the world with their weak little shoulders. Step. With one step, he appears towards Ophis, head and gently picks up the little girl. He wasn't being affected by her scream. I'm sorry, my little girl. I took too long. His heart sank when he saw Ophis, stayed in her crying face. Ah. Slowly Ophis stops screaming when she feels the man's embrace. Father, Shish. It's okay, I know. Victor removes the glove from his hand, makes a small cut in his flesh with his fingernail, and gently lets his blood fall into Ophis' mouth. The vampires seemed to go crazy when they smelled Victor's blood, but unlike Ophis, they couldn't move. August, who at some point recovered from Ophis' scream, looked at Victor, and his face darkened. Fuck, he arrived too fast. I need to get out of here and meet Sylvie. The moment he took a step towards running away, he fell to the ground. He looked confused, and it wasn't until seconds later that the pain came on, and he screamed as he looked down. Half of his body had been cut off. He broke out in an even colder sweat when he realized he didn't even feel the man move. With the help of the blood in Victor's body, the progenitor blood in Ophis' blood reacted strongly, as the little girl's body became pure blood and flew towards her. And in the blink of an eye, she was whole again. Father. Sniff. She held onto Victor's shirt tightly as she cried silently. I know. Victor lightly stroked Ophis' head as he hugged her, lifted the girl, and held her with one hand. He walked quietly towards Nero, and seeing the girl's wounds, he realized something. She won't survive long. Victor owed an unpayable debt to Nero. With just one look, he could understand how much pressure this little girl was under. For a hybrid that can't even use the abilities of a vampire and a werewolf, she did very well. She did very well indeed. Victor bit his lip when he saw the little girl who was almost the same age as Ophis in this state. You won't die. I won't let you. He approached Nero and bit her neck as he sucked her blood. And the moment he sucked her blood, he felt like his whole body was rejecting that blood, but he didn't care. After drinking a few doses of her blood, he saw Nero's recent memories. He also saw memories of when she was trapped in a stark white place looking like a laboratory, until one day an explosion happened and she managed to escape. With just a little bit of Nero's blood, Victor saw the entire existence known as Nero. He bit his wrist and let his blood fall into the girl's mouth. His eyes gleamed blood red. Your soul. Your existence. It has undeniable value to me. I won't let you die. The moment the blood fell into the girl's mouth, and she swallowed. Badump. The sound of a heartbeat was heard by everyone, and soon she opened her eyes as she screamed in pain. Nero. Shish, it's okay. I'm just healing her. I won't harm her. Victor pats Ophis' back as he says this. Trusting her father completely, she didn't say anything else and just watched as the little girl who had always protected her screamed in pain. Victor, all the time she was screaming, never stopped looking at her body. He was completely focused on eliminating the evil substances from Nero's body, controlling his blood in her body as if he were a surgeon. A novice surgeon, Victor did his best to eradicate everything that was harmful to Nero. Soul and blood are a parent's bargaining chip. Instinctively, Victor was demonstrating to everyone what that phrase implied. He was changing Nero's entire existence in front of everyone. Cough. Nero stopped screaming and coughed violently on the floor, and everyone could see a kind of black and green liquid mixed on the floor. Blueghhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhh. Victor's eyes were healed. When Nero stopped vomiting, everything she was doing felt different. She felt much better. She gets up from the floor and looks at the liquid with disgust. She knew what it was all the products those wretches had put in her body. Feeling sick from the sight, she suddenly felt someone stroking her head. What did you do to me? She asked as she looked at the tall man. I made you better than you were before. He responded with a gentle smile as he continued to stroke the girl's head. What is that supposed to mean? She asked as she got comfortable with Victor's caresses. You'll find out soon enough. He chuckled as he looked into the little girl's newly acquired red eyes. Two portals appear in the sky, and from one, a golden-haired man appears, and in the other portal, a blonde woman accompanied by several women appears. What terrible pressure! The woman with long black hair that had wings and a demon tail spoke up. It's like I'm on the slaughtering ground again. The long blonde-haired woman spoke as they both looked curiously at the ground. Well, that's a rare sight, multiple enemy races coming together for just one little girl. An even worse silence descended on everyone. They completely ignored the two women. Instead, their eyes were on two red-haired women specifically speaking. The older woman, wearing the red armor she always wore and holding a spear. Scathach Scarlet. If things were fucked up before, now the situation was completely fucked up. Father, it took you a while to find her. Natalia complained. Where is your dignity as the Vampire King's right hand? Quote. Alexios in a cold sweat when he saw his daughter's gaze. Well, Earth is big. I was in Russia when I heard about what happened here from some allied witches. Witches are never to be trusted. Jean and Anna spoke at the same time. I know, Alexios replied in a restrained way to the two women. He didn't know what to call them, considering they were his master's ex-wives. He looked at Victor, and seeing Ophis holding the man tightly, he sighed inwardly as he realized that perhaps the father image Vlad had was completely destroyed by Victor with this incident. Well, fuck it. That's not my fucking problem. Alexios ignored the problem. Victor, they. Hearing Nero's voice, everyone fell silent and turned their attention to the little girl. I know. He laughed gently. He stops stroking Nero's head, and looks up at the sky, specifically at Scathach, Ruby, and Sasha, his eyes not even registering the presence of Jean and Anna. Ruby, Sasha, and Scathach, feeling Victor's gaze, instinctively knew he was calling them. They disappeared from the sky and appeared in front of Victor. Take care of them. Victor tried to give Ophis to Sasha. But the little girl held his shirt tightly. Quote. Father. Quote. The girls had their hearts sinking when they saw Ophis' tearful face. I'm not going anywhere, he chuckled gently as he stroked Ophis' head. Your father only has to punish a few beings. Thousands of them, promise. Yeah, just hang out with them for a while, okay. Ophis made a complicated expression. She didn't want to be separated from Victor, but when she turned to Ruby and Sasha, she understood that she was no longer in danger. Good girl. Victor hands Ophis to Sasha. Ruby lightly touches Nero's shoulder. Nice to meet you in person, Nero. I'm Ruby Scarlet. Quote. His wife, one of them. She laughed in amusement when she said that. Quote. Nero didn't know what to do when she heard this joke that wasn't funny. Quote. Stay with me for a few minutes, okay? She spoke while looking into Nero's red eyes. Okay. Nero spoke as she looked at Ophis, who was in the hand of a blonde woman. She's fine now, huh? She breathed a sigh of relief inwardly. Ruby and Sasha disappear along with Nero and Ophis and appear in the sky next to the other girls. They were floating, a demonstration that they never stopped their training. Now she could even use that basic vampire skill. Something that, for the age of only 21 and 22, was absurd. Ruby was holding Nero by the arm, much to the girl's misfortune, but she didn't have much to do now. She just felt frustrated because she was being bullied by those giant boobs. She gave up trying to resist. What do you plan to do, Victor? Scathach asked just out of courtesy. Hunting and destroying. The magic circle in Victor's hand began to glow fiercely. He spits on the ground, and the same liquid that came out of Nero's body came out of his body. Hunting who? Scathach's smile grew. Everyone. Victor's entire face began to unravel as if his skin was peeling, and soon only a kind of darkness that showed his sharp teeth and blood-red eyes was visible. Witches, yokai, demons, werewolves, hunters, vampires. Victor takes a step forward as the sounds of chains are heard by everyone, the sounds of chains breaking. Quote. That's right. It can't end like this. Everyone will pay for what happened tonight. Scathach's smile was sincerely making the people around them more uncomfortable, especially Jean and Anna, who saw Scathach look at the man with looks that only a woman with immense feelings would give to a man. This was not the look of a master looking at her disciple. It can't be, that woman. The two were speechless and couldn't believe what they were seeing. Level 2 feet lowering his powers restriction level by one more level. Victor finally stops holding back his mood, and Foosh hhhhhhhhhhhhh. Even more bloodthirsty pressure shot out of Victor's body and exploded around him. Quote. Quote. For a few seconds, everyone, including Scathach, could see themselves in a great red sea of blood and bodies. And they saw a man sitting on top of what looked like an island full of bodies of dead people. Everyone responsible for this incident, everyone who thought they could profit from this incident, everyone who had the balls to target my daughter. With each sentence that his demonic voice uttered, the beings present felt heavier and heavier, as if they were being drowned in that sea of blood. A large red wing of a pure red bat shot out behind Victor. Boom! An Odachi fell from the sky beside Victor. Victor takes the odachi in his hand, and the entire sword is covered in the power of blood, and the feeling that the odachi gave was quite ominous. Everyone will die. Chapter 344, Crimson Nightmare. 2. Will die. Victor's statement fell like a death sentence for all those present. When these words were registered in the minds of all the supernaturals present, in the minds of all the curious supernaturals who were watching this encounter, when those words reached the depths of the hearts of all beings present. All beings present felt fear, a primordial fear, that consumed their entire existence. And in response to that fear, consciousness was erased, and instinct prevailed. Therefore, everyone's reaction was unanimous. Kill him. Nobody knew who screamed, nobody paid enough attention to it, but this man's words made the supernatural beings loosen their restraints. They ignored rationality, and attacked him like crazy. ROOOOOOOOOOOOAR. Yokai, vampires, werewolves, all these beings present showed their true form, and attacked Victor all at the same time. Quote. Scathach displays a sneer, and took a step back, and appeared beside the girls. Call the maids, I'll need them. She ordered Natalia. Natalia shivered before nodding her head. Evidently, the air that Scathach now had was too frightening, thus, she quickly entered a portal she created. When all the supernatural beings got close enough to Victor, the man threw his odachi up, and caught two beings with both of his hands. The first was a yokai that had green scales and reptilian eyes, and the other was a werewolf. Make no mistake, this is not a fight. He picked up the werewolf and threw it at the group. Boom, crack, crack, sounds of bones breaking and screams were heard as they were hit. Victor grabbed the yokai's arm and pulled. Ah, a demonic scream was heard. Victor ripped off the yokai's arm and pierced the yokai's body with his own arm bone. With the yokai's own arm protruding from its chest, Victor lunged forward to pierce the yokai with his two claws, and rip it open down the middle. Blood exploded around and smeared everyone present, bones and organs fell to the ground. This is carnage. He took the two halves of the yokai's body and used them as a weapon. He spun around in the area, and the body he was holding hit all the yokai present. All beings flew in the air, and the second they were floating in the air, Victor's odachi dropped back into his hand. He held the gigantic odachi in a iijutsu stance, eyes glowing for a few fractions of a second with lightning yellow, as he focused his attention above the clouds. With a swift iijutsu draw further enhanced by his lightning speed. Foosh hhhhhhh. A rush of air came out as Victor completed the move, and what followed was silence. To everyone else, it seemed like Victor hadn't moved, but they could all instinctually feel the danger emanating from him. But then, after what seemed like an eternity, it suddenly happened. Everything in front of him was cut in half. Not just the yokai, the building wall, the water tank, and even the sky itself. Everything in a row has been cut horizontally. And in the next second, all beings in front of him disappeared, and in the third second, they blew up into thousands of pieces. And in the fourth second, all the clouds in the sky disappeared by the pressure of the wind alone. When the weather returned to normal, a rain of blood began to fall in the area of the building. Along with the humans' screams of shock. The humans freaked out when they saw bodies falling from the building, and when they felt the blood on their body, they were petrified. And their reaction was as expected. They started screaming and running. None of them had ever seen body parts like this in their lives. What the fuck was that? Anna could not remain silent in the face of such a demonstration. A variation of my mother's 1 million hits technique. Sasha responded with a shock similar to Anna's. Although still not as strong as Natasha, it is still very good. This little monster managed to replicate this technique with a melee weapon. Scathach felt quite satisfied, and she supported this feat of the weapon that Victor had achieved. Scathach valued that weapons were an extension of the user, and because of that, the weapon shouldn't break even if used violently. Howdy. Anna was going to continue the question, but she saw Victor releasing the odachi, watching as it floated in place from where he stood. Soon after, Victor disappeared and appeared before the group that was not hit, and using his fist, he punched with all his strength at a vampire's head. The vampire's head literally disappears, the pressure around it throwing everyone away. Victor then burst forth, grabbing the legs of 2 yokai and started using the bodies of the 2 yokai as weapons. Ah! Victor's new weapons screamed, and the supernatural beings below began to be heard. What is with him? Jean and Anna thought at the same time. The way he fights is brutal. Jean said. Usually, he's not like that. Ruby defended Victor. He's just pissed off. Very pissed off. Seeing him dismembering being after being, using their own bodies as a weapon against them, Ruby felt a little sick, and wanted to throw up, although her face didn't change outwardly. Soon a portal appeared next to the girls and 6 women wearing maid uniforms with variations in clothing came out of the portal. And the moment they left the portal, the first thing that caught their attention was a scream of pain. Ah! They looked in unison towards the place, and saw their master causing a bloodbath. He was standing with his foot on the head of a white-haired man while holding 2 bodies by the legs. Damn monster! August roared. And you provoked this monster. Victor released the 2 bodies that were completely broken. It would have been a divine miracle if those 2 yokai were alive right now. Victor put strength in his foot and August literally felt his brain being crushed. Ah, that's right. Scream like a pig being slaughtered. Victor's smile grew, and slowly he put more strength into his foot. When August's head was about to explode like a watermelon being broken, someone appeared in front of Victor, and using the 2 golden daggers, this stranger cut his body into several pieces. I can't let you kill him yet. Taking advantage of this moment, the woman tried to grab the man's body, but suddenly, the woman felt her head being held by Victor. Novel. Sylvie. August tried to do something but his head was squeezed even tighter. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark question mark quote. She didn't understand how it happened, she was sure she'd cut his entire body to shreds. And indeed had done so. When Victor's entire body collapsed to the ground, his body turned a color of darkness with shades of red. Victor's existence became something like a smoke where his entire severed body was connected. Victor brought his face closer to Sylvie's. It's not you who decides that. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Her face darkened with fear, and when she felt both of the man's hands holding her face, she started to panic. Victor brought his thumbs closer to Sylvie's face and sunk them into her eyes. Ah! A woman's cry of pain echoed around. Victor's smile grew, he ripped off the woman's arm like pulling a chicken drumstick off its body, and with a simple gesture, he threw her arm towards a Japanese vampire who was trying to run away. The woman's severed arm blasted through the Japanese noble vampire's head, and he fell to the ground. Victor let go of the woman who was screaming while holding her now bleeding stub. Not sparing her any mercy, Victor stomped on her knee, causing her leg to bend invertedly, forming the shape of a V. The woman screamed even louder. He broke her other knee with one foot. Stay there, I'll be back in a few seconds. Soon he turned to the Japanese noble vampire. How are you alive after having your body destroyed by that energy? How? Who said her dagger had hit me? He replied as his entire body was rebuilt. Quote. Stepping on the bodies of the beings that were still there, making sure to inflict as much pain on them as possible, Victor began to run at a normal speed, using someone's head as a boost. He jumped in front of the supernatural beings who were trembling in fear. The moment he arrived in front of a vampire slave, the man used his claws in a panic to pounce on Victor's face. Victor just slowly averted his head, the claws passing by his face, and with a slightly forceful gesture, he hit the man's arm, snapping the appendage in two. In the next move he kicked the man's knee, and just like the woman, his knee sank, and his leg turned in a strange direction. Ah! When the man would fall to the ground, Victor held his head by his mouth. Why are you screaming? Just smile. Smile because today is a joyous occasion for you, right? So smile. Victor's smile grew, and with a little force, he ripped his lower jaw from his face. No longer having Victor to support his weight, the vampire collapsed to the ground, bleeding profusely. However, Victor wasn't done. Thrusting his hand through the vampire's chest, Victor grabbed hold of its spine, before pulling it out of the hole he'd made. He kept pulling, causing the rest of the spine to split through his victim's chest, before pulling the vampire's head with it. Victor now stood to his full height, holding in his right hand the detached spine of his victim that still had a head fully attached to the end, and used the spine as a weapon. Crack! When the top of the skull hit someone's head, the sound of bones breaking echoed out across the area. Quote. This is brutal. Jean couldn't help but twitch her eyes. She'd experienced wars, and wars have always had conflict, but not on this level. As he himself said, this is just a carnage. She felt sick. Victor doesn't want to kill them all quickly, he could do that if he wanted to. Scathach suddenly spoke up. Everyone looked at her, and she flashed a big smile. He wants to inflict pain on all these beings, he wants revenge, and death is just an easy way to get away from him. But what about that attack? Anna talked about the attack in which Victor used his odachi. He attacked the curious beings that were watching us. Quote. Jean and Anna narrowed their eyes, they doubted Scathach's words. You are rusty, Scathach smirked. Quote. The two women felt uncomfortable when they heard the woman say this. Master Scathach, why did you call us? Kagaya spoke without taking her eyes off her master that was dismembering all the beings present with his hands. She knew more or less what happened thanks to Natalia, and she knew that her master only reacted like this when someone close to him was hurt. And this time it was Ophis, someone he saw as a daughter. It's time to hunt. Quote. Kagaya looked at Scathach with a confused look. You will hunt down all supernatural beings responsible for this incident, all beings who wanted to take advantage of this situation. You will hunt them all down, and bring them to me, alive. Gulp. Nero swallowed and unconsciously, she tightened her grip on Ruby's body. This woman was scary, she was on the same level as that man down there. Number need to be afraid, Nero. She doesn't bite, well, only when she wants to. Ruby commented with a small smile. Quote. Nero was speechless as she looked at Ruby, she didn't even know how to react to those words. Looking at Ophis, she saw that the blonde-haired woman was covering Ophis's ears as she forced her to look at the landscape. She had a tense smile on her face, and next to her was the blonde man who appeared from a strange portal. They were trying their best to keep Ophis from seeing or hearing the hell below. I sincerely wanted this treatment too, she felt quite nauseous, but on top of that, did she feel satisfied? Seeing those beings suffering so much made her very happy. Kagaya will be in charge, you are responsible for capturing everyone. Kagaya's power was very convenient for kidnapping people, the person just needed to be knocked unconscious, and she could drag that person into her shadow. Quote. Master. Roxanne held up her hand. Yes, Roxanne. Quote. By everyone, you mean literally everyone. Yeah, everyone you suspect has tried to take advantage of this situation, it doesn't matter if you have just the slightest suspicion. Bring them all in. Quote. They all nodded indicating that they understood. Oh yes, if you see a god, or any being stronger than you, don't be ashamed to back down. Scathach flashed a small smile. Yes, master. Before they could complete their sentence, they heard the loud sound. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound, and saw Victor holding a man by his clothes while slamming his fist into his face. The worm. Boom. Wishing. Boom. My daughter's blood. Boom 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 boom. Victor, with controlled force, hit the man on the head several times, the man's skull sunk in, blood sprayed all over the place. He waited a few seconds to repeat the process. Over and over again, he punched the man in the face. Boom. A web-shaped crater was starting to form beneath the man. Stop, please. Victor lifted the man by the neck, and lifted him into the air. He pulled on his right arm. He pulled in his left arm. He threw them towards yokai who were trying to run away. The arm bones pierced the yokai's spines, causing them to collapse mid-step, paralyzed. He threw the man's body to the ground, and pulled both his legs. Resting his foot purposely on his victim's genitals, he used it as leverage and slowly pulled the legs off the man's body. Sounds of flesh tearing, sounds of bones breaking, sounds of man screaming like a pig being butchered alive were heard. And that caused even more fear in everyone. Dismembering the man completely, all that was left was his head and torso. His organs spilled to the floor, and Victor lifted him by the neck off the floor again. See count, please, forgive me. Victor's face returns to normal, and he displayed an innocent smile. The vampire's heart leapt, he had a small hope that he would make it out of this place alive, but Victor's own words left him completely hopeless. My congratulations, thanks to you, all the noble vampires of Japan will go extinct. He decided to finish Mizuki's botched job. Rejoice, you will definitely be remembered forever in Japanese history as the vampire who brought disaster to your country. Quote. That, if there are any survivors, of course. Quote. Looking at Victor's innocent smile, the vampire's brain felt like it had short-circuited. Suddenly, the surroundings changed, and a red moon appeared in the sky. Of course, the vampire didn't notice this, he was too focused on looking at Victor. Bastard. The moment he opened his mouth, he felt something enter his mouth. Victor's smile changed to a cruel smile, and he looked in one direction. Holding the vampire by the head, he threw the vampire in a direction towards the sky. Count Alucard, you are trespassing. The crows that had just arrived suddenly saw a body coming towards them. Huh, that was all they could say before they were engulfed in a massive explosion. Boom. Ha 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 tilde. Chapter 345, Hypocrisy. Standing amidst a sea of bodies was a tall man with long black hair, red eyes and who had wings of blood coming out of his back. He was standing and looking at all the beings scattered around the building suffering from their pain. Looking at the image on his monitor, looking at that man's smiling face, James felt quite odd. This being, this creature, this monster, James basically watched him grow in every encounter and report, and in every conflict, he grew quite erratically. And in a short time, he'd become quite a terrifying creature. James's eyes gleamed for a few seconds, and unconsciously, he recorded this scene in his head. And for the first time in a long time in his life, he felt respect, admiration, and most of all awe. His smile grew a little, and he said, quote, Count Alucard, your existence really is an affront to God. He clicked the release button. S000, I released the restriction on your powers. But don't use your powers now. The probability of you fleeing from Alucard and Scathach is very low. I will send a distraction, hold on until then. Finished speaking, he looked back at Victor, the camera shifted to the women in the sky, and his expression grew heavy. Quote, He got even more insane, and gained 2 more troublesome allies. James muttered as he watched this situation with a small black bug that he asked Sylvie to put on before going to save August. A bug he'd received from Niklas. And to think that Vlad's ex-wives would ally themselves with this man. Your goals, as expected, are revenge and recovering your children. I can use this. Making plans for Vlad's wives, he looked at the women who began to disappear. Quote, These women are his servants. He had already seen some of these women in the reports when Victor started destroying the Inquisition's bases with Mizuki. But, one woman in the group was strange to him. Focusing his attention on the long red-haired woman who had sharp teeth, and pointy, elf-like ears, he narrowed his eyes even further. What is that? A vampire? Or something else? Realizing that at some point his enemy had acquired allies he didn't know about, a feeling of impatience welled up in his heart. Seeing the women disappearing into a blue portal, James's face turned ugly. If it continues like this, he will become unstoppable. And I don't know anything about these maids. Maria was the only one of the group that he had enough information about her past, but the rest were all question marks for him. The monitor changed again, and the man looked at his experiments. Tisk. If they hadn't wasted time trying to capture Ophis, I would have gotten my hands on Nero. He felt quite irritated. When he learned of the existence of a natural hybrid through his new ally, he felt his researcher instinct kick in. He wished to study Nero. Perhaps with the research of this hybrid he could stabilize the artificial hybrids he created. Single quote. Now that she's under Alucard's protection, I have no choice but to ask Niklas for information. But that bloodsucker will definitely ask for something in return. His eyes focused on his experiments lying on the floor. I can't lose SOOO, and AOOO now. They are near-perfect products, and my strongest products so far. Looking toward another screen that showed the body condition of his 2 experiments, James did some calculations in his mind. If that monster were alone, one of them might be able to escape. But since Scathach is in this place, it's literally impossible to run away. Tisk, why does this crazy woman like this man so much? She's even getting into a conflict that has nothing to do with her daughters or family. Stopping to think, he clicked on a communicator, and called a friend of his. Yes, General Leonardo, a conflict has taken place, the demon Alucard is in Japan and causing massacres, and he is with one of my precious subordinates. Briefly explaining the situation to his ally, of course he didn't forget to make it look like everything was Victor's fault. I am on my way. Thanks. He smiled coldly. Turning off the communicator, he clicked the keyboard again. S001, A004. I have orders for you. S000, A000, I released the restriction on your powers. But don't use your powers now, the probability of you fleeing from Alucard and Scathach is very low, I'll send a distraction, hold on until then. Quote. Hearing James's voice, Sylvie's and August's faces didn't change. They just focused on using their powers slowly to recover all the damage they suffered. They made sure to use their powers slowly so Alucard wouldn't notice. Suddenly Victor turned his face, and his eyes glowed blood red. BOOOOOOOOOOOOM. A large ice spike popped out of the ground, and in front of that pillar was a small creature. Cough. Bloody monster, How could you see through my illusion? Nura spat blood. He was trying to take advantage of the chaos and run away. The simple fact that you think you can fool me is funny. Victor laughed lightly as he looked at the yokai, and then he looked at two bodies that were lying on the ground, right? Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Sylvie and August's bodies shook when they felt Victor's gaze. Victor snapped his finger and ice stakes pierced the two hunters' bodies. Ah! They both screamed in pain, and slowly the ice on the stake began to change shape. Victor raised his palm and made some hand gestures. The two suddenly seemed to lose control of their body, and they were forced to raise their hand. A thorn pierced both their hands, and an image that marked an entire religion was remade. They were crucified. This is an experiment. Victor's voice resounded throughout the place. Will God save you, or not? Are you as worthy of God's attention as you were with Jesus, or are your bodies defiled? Crazy bastard. Sylvie growled as she forced her body to regenerate. Are you going to spit in the face of the church? Are you crazy? August went on the offensive. Don't be a hypocrite. Victor spoke in disdain. You don't represent the church. You do not represent the Catholic faith. Victor's eyes lit up. In my time that I had with your former general, I saw people. Ordinary people who truly applied God's teachings of kindness and love. They were simple people, people who helped others without wanting anything in return. A time that reminded him that he had once been human, even though it had only been a few months since he'd become a vampire. He was so lost in conflict, his problems, and his powers, that he'd forgotten what he was before. God said, "Love one another as I have loved you." And there are people who apply these teachings. Good people. Victor remembered the vision of an old lady who despite her disability still helped people. For a moment, his eyes turned to violet. But you are just tools made by a man who likes to play God. A paranoid organization that thinks all supernatural beings are their enemies, and yet they ally themselves with other supernatural beings when they need to. An organization that has been distorted from its original purpose. The Inquisition was made to protect humans, to protect ordinary people from supernatural threats. Quote. That is good in theory, but in reality. Victor flashed a sneer. Just like any organization created by sentient beings who have desires, the organization has been corrupted. With that, you were created. You are the physical representation of how rotten your organization is. And in the end, you just use the name of God to justify your actions. Victor raised his hands to the sky, and looked to the sky. His voice changed, and became more dramatic. I killed an entire community by order of God. The community had a witch, they were corrupted. We must go to war, but this is no ordinary war. It's a holy war, we must fight. God wills it. Quote. I burned a woman at the stake, a woman who helped our country, because she fell into the temptation of a demon. Quote. Quote. Jean's eyes fluttered a little when she saw Victor's theatrical performance. Cough. August coughed and spat on the floor, his eyes glowing blood red. How about you? You massacred innocent human beings, you will massacre all the supernatural beings in Japan, you are sitting on top of thousands of corpses. And all this because of a quote. Quote. Victor stopped talking, and turned to August. Victor's pure killing instinct shut August down. She is my daughter, and I will burn the world for her if I have to. Quote. Quote. Scathach, Ruby, Sasha smiled. Jean and Anna looked at Victor with feelings of respect. Nero thought it wouldn't be bad to have a father like that, a father who did everything to protect his daughter, and who was always there. Sigh. Victor's smile grew demonic. And that's our difference. I will take the blame for my actions, I will not hide the sin I did in someone else's name. The supernatural world of Japan will be stained in blood, and everyone, including myself, will know that I did it. My sin is mine alone, I created it, and it will be with me for eternity. He spoke possessively. Quote. Quote. August was silent when he heard what that madman said, and soon veins started popping in his head. Quote. You talk about us like we're evil, but you're going to cause mass genocide. He roared. There is no good or evil, it's all a matter of perspective. To you and the entire supernatural community of Japan, I am evil. But, for my daughter. Victor looked at Ophis, who at some point was looking at him again. Well, I don't need to explain, right? Quote. You are a hypocrite. Hey, I'm a hypocrite with a conscience, but I'm way better than you hypocrites who hide behind someone else's name. Ha 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 tilde. From the beginning Victor had always followed a mentality of, I will do what I want, when I want, where I want. His mindset never changed. From the start he knew he was the biggest hypocrite out there. But, the Inquisition slapped Victor in the face for hypocrisy, yet they were way more hypocritical than he was. If no one provoked Victor, he'd be a harmless little boy, he'd just train, and go looking for opponents to have an honest fight. But, he knew the world didn't work the way he wanted. He's completely mad. Anna spoke. I wouldn't say that, Jean replied. He is very sensible. Huh, how? Anna looked around and didn't find anyone sane around, she just found a bunch of psychopaths. Jean was silent, finishing her orders. Scathach looked at the red moon. The reverse world is still standing. Someone needs to be holding this place. Are they trying to hold us in this place while gathering strength? She looked around and found no one. Do they think they can arrest me in this place? She smirked. Picking up her red spear, she made a casual swing, and a breach opened in the sky. Did you break the sky? Ruby asked in a ridiculous tone. This is the reverse world, it's a technique of yokai that uses yuki. They usually use this place to fight, and resolve their conflicts. This place is like a scattered dimension of Tokyo itself. Jean explained to Ruby. Oh, that explains it. By the way, who are you, guys? Isn't that kind of late? I kind of forgot due to the urgency of the situation. You can say that we are Vlad's ex-wives. Oh, now I understand why you guys know my mother. Do you believe people so easily? Anna laughed. My mother doesn't get along with many people, and I know that in the past she taught the royal guards, so it wouldn't be strange for her to meet you. Makes sense. The two spoke at the same time. Scathach narrowed her eyes, and she saw a man with red hair and blue eyes. He was alone, he was flying in a kind of golden energy. Oh, is he here? Was he revived? Scathach had memories of killing this man. In the blink of an eye, the man flew towards Victor and punched him in the face. Boom! A golden explosion erupted out from the impact, and all the bodies around Victor were evaporated. The building they were in was also evaporated. The only thing left intact were the beings that were on the ice stake. The man seemed to control his strength quite efficiently. In the next quarter second, the dust that was lifted, and the image of Victor holding the man's fist was seen. And you are General Leonardo. The man spoke as he looked at Victor's hand, which was covered with the power of blood. This power managed to resist the energy of God. He was quite shocked, but it didn't show on his face. Leo, Victor casually simplified the man's name. For a few seconds his eyes changed to violet, and he looked at Leo. And he saw a pillar of golden light coming out of the man's body, and his entire internal structure was pure energy. Victor opened his eyes wide, he had never seen anything like it before. Victor, don't lose your attention. Scathach warned him. I know. He turned his face, and saw another man similar to the man he was holding the ice pillar that Auguste and Sylvie were on. Clone, looking at the man's body with his eyes, he saw the same pillar of golden light coming out of his body. Or twins. Suddenly, he felt someone trying to punch him in the face. Time around Victor froze, and he quickly created a small ice shield in front of him. Boom! He flew a little in the air, and quickly he adjusted his position in the air, and saw another man just like the two before. Twins, eliminated. So clones. He was created in an instant. Because of that, I couldn't feel them. Victor's eyes gleamed with interest. The man standing next to the ice crucifix threw the two pillars towards the opening in the sky. Oh, you're trying to save them. That's rare. They are my companions. Even if they are hybrids. Seeing Leonardo's face tremble slightly, Victor's smile grew a little. So, you didn't know. Rumble, rumble. Victor disappeared, leaving behind a golden trail, and appeared in the path of the crucifix. It seems that it was not God who saved you, but a general. Victor thought with an amused smile. August, now, Sylvie spoke up. Now, what? Victor appeared beside her as she flew in the same trajectory as the crucifix. Quote! Just how fast are you? Who knows? Victor reached out and grabbed the two hunters by the neck. He spun in the air several times and threw them in Ruby's direction. Ruby, my gift to you. Two fresh hybrids, treat them gently. He flashed a small smile. Ruby created two ice hands, and took them both. Oh, Tilda, her smile grew. I will. Quote! Seeing Ruby's smile, the two could easily recognize it. It was the same smile James gave them when the man discovered something interesting to try. Fuck. Foosh. The two's bodies were frozen by Ruby, and a few seconds later Ruby's ice hand melted, and turned into water. She controlled the water and surrounds the two beings, and soon a block of ice was created. Leonardo was going to jump in to try to save them both, but he stopped when he felt a person's gaze. Precisely speaking of two people. Scathach and Alucard. They had a look that said, "Do you dare?" Leonardo's instincts screamed, warning him not to make that decision, because he would die, again. Tisk. The two beings similar to him disappeared and returned to his body. Rumble. I think this is the first time. Victor appeared near Leonardo. What? This is the first time I've seen a human hunter use these powers without needing enchantments. Don't compare me to these useless ones. I don't need incantations, because my faith comes from here. He points to his chest while smiling. My faith comes from the heart. Quote. Oh, chapter 346, like a storm god. My faith comes from the heart. Quote. Oh, if I take your heart away, will you still have faith? Victor appeared in front of the man who came out of the breach in the sky, and his hand went through the man's body. He pulled out the man's heart. Band up. Looking at the heart in his hand, Victor felt strange. The texture he felt was legitimate, but for some reason, he felt it was false. The man's body fell from the sky, and the moment his body fell to the ground, he disappeared in a golden light. As long as I breathe, my faith in my God is unshakable. Victor casually dodged the golden sword that was thrown towards him, and looked at the man. Tisk. He's weaker than Mizuki, but he's hiding his powers. Victor assessed the situation. Two golden wings appeared behind the man again, and with a thrust he flew towards Victor. I must kill him here. When the two swords were about to hit Victor's body, Victor assumed a martial arts stance in midair, and in less than 1 second, his body was covered by lightning, his fists were covered by ice, and a spiked gloves appeared. Victor parried Leo's attack, redirecting it upwards, to create an opening. He changed his martial arts stance. In the same instance, Victor generated a massive greatsword made of ice, which spontaneously burst into both flames and yellow electricity. Tensing the muscles in his arm, Victor swung his weapon in an attempt to slice the man in half, but before the greatsword could hit the man's body, a golden shield appeared in front of him. Clang! The loud sound of two metals colliding echoed out around them. Foosh hhhhhhhh. Followed by a shockwave that rippled through the surroundings. Suddenly, a clone appeared next to Victor as its body glowed. Victor's perception of time sped up once more, causing the world around him to slow down again, and he turned to face the clone. The clone attacked Victor with both swords, but with minimal movements, Victor angled his body just enough that the clone missed his blow. Not giving up, the clone attacked faster. But all the blows were deflected from that awkward position. Time returned to normal again. And, fushhhhhhhh. Several arc swings of golden power passed by Victor, but it never hit the man. Damn monster, just how fast you are. Quote. My wife is the fastest woman alive. Victor gripped onto the man's head, and started squeezing, and I can't be left behind. Let go of me. The clone's body exploded in golden power. And Victor's hand disappeared from existence. Victor raised an eyebrow when he saw his hand disappearing, and saw that his body was having trouble regenerating the damage. His power is greater. Victor watched his hand return to normal at a much slower pace than he was used to. He's stronger, much stronger, so, can he be a worthy opponent? Victor's smile grew wider. Unbeknownst to Leo, he'd pressed a button that no one should press on Victor. Taking advantage of Victor's apparent distraction, the clone quickly flew towards the original body, and saved it. The clone quickly broke apart the ice a little, and golden energy left his hand and entered the hole he created. And in less than a few seconds the man inside the ice came out in all his glory, and he was completely recovered. Quote. An uncomfortable silence fell around the girls, specifically speaking Nero, Jean and Anna. How old is he? Anna asked in shock. 21 years old. Wait, he's 22 now. Ruby corrected herself. 22 years old, and he fights like that. Jean spoke as Anna's mouth dropped open in shock. Come to think of it, Ruby is older than me now, Sasha thought to herself. Still not good enough. Scathach snorted. Wah. Jean couldn't believe what she heard. Just when will he be good enough, mother? Ruby asked curiously. When he defeats me. She flashed a small smile. Quote. Ruby's face quivered a little, and she thought in twisted amusement, and will that be the day I call my own mother my sister? Quote. If he keeps evolving like this, can he defeat her? Sasha asked curiously. Scathach isn't exactly a weak woman, and she never stopped training, so it's hard to say. Alexios was the one who replied. He was also shocked by what he was seeing, although he didn't show it like the two women and child. Scathach, how much longer? Victor's voice was heard by everyone. Everyone looked towards Victor and saw him looking at his hand. Scathach's smile grew a little when she heard Victor's question, and she replied. 3 minutes. Very well. Victor landed on top of a building, and as he kept his stance low, his body began to glow gold. Rumble, rumble. At some point the odachi returned to his hand, and the odachi began to glow a golden hue. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. The people around didn't understand their dialogue. But that was normal for them, even though they weren't in each other's heads like Victor was with Sasha, Ruby and Violet, the two understood each other like the back of their hand. Ophis looked at Victor, and Sasha and Alexios didn't try to stop it again. The vision of hell that was before was cleared by the red-haired man. Taking care of a child is hard. Sasha sighed when she saw Ophis's gaze. You need to get used to it, when you have. Jean was going to say something, but suddenly her mouth was held by Ruby. Don't talk about that right now, idiot. What if you give my mother the wrong idea? Think of my situation where I will be her child's sister mother. She whispered fiercely. She wasn't ready to have this vision yet, maybe a few thousand years from now. Despite having toyed with it before in her head, she still wasn't ready for this news. Anna and Jean were speechless. So they have this relationship. They weren't dreaming. Stop playing around, we need to get out of here. Why? Quote. You really are rusty. Scathach looked at Anna in disdain. Where is the former demon general she fought? Quote. Quote. Anna felt uncomfortable when she felt Scathach's gaze. Anna, where are you now? In the reverse world of yokai. And the reverse world needs energy to keep up. Anna replied like a duckling, and then she opened her eyes in shock. That's correct, they're here, all the major gods of Japan. They're watching just as they keep this world reversed. Scathach spoke as she looked at the gap that was starting to close. Single quote. These idiots know that Clan Alioth is here, why are they trying so hard to trap us? Scathach thought to herself as she spoke. Victor, who is thousands of years younger than you, felt the gaze of these beings, and he judged this situation better than you. What a great ex-demon general you are. I'm rusty okay. And the bloodlust isn't helping. Excuses. Quote. Quote. A vein bulged on Anna's head. Regroup, create a base of operations, and send the most vulnerable members to safety. Jean suddenly spoke to herself. That is correct. Fighting the gods head-on is stupid. Scathach was already thinking of methods to face the gods if necessary. It all depended on Victor, and his attitude towards this war. Let me see how you handle this situation, Tilda. Her smile grew. Why? Sasha asked. And it was Anna who replied. The gods are dirtier than the demons when they fight. Quote. Quote. Sasha nodded indicating that she understood, and she startled a little when she heard the crack of lightning near her. Rumble, rumble. They quickly looked at Victor, and saw the man crouching like an animal. His body was surrounded by a very strong golden lightning, and his odachi was in his mouth, sheathless. Rumble. A giant lightning bolt fell on top of Victor, and soon the lightning from his body began to change. 2 golden bat wings, a large sharp tail, and animal claws, precisely speaking, parts of demonic beasts, began to appear. Quote. Is that a demon beast? Sasha found his current appearance very similar to the demon beast he'd fought in her turf. And feeling the power emanating from Victor's body, she opened her eyes in shock. Did he change the vampire count's transformation? How is that possible? Isn't the vampire count transformation just vampires reverting to their original state? How can he change that so easily? Sasha was full of doubts now. Victor's head took the form of a lightning beast, his power wrapped around his face like a helmet. His ears became sharper, his lips disappeared, and his teeth were the only thing visible. What the fuck is this? Leonardo just didn't know how to react to this. He entered the form of a vampire count, but why is it so strange? Quote. This is new. Scathach showed a confused face. She had never seen it before in her entire life. Is he using the memories of the demon beast he absorbed with that tree to do this? And at the same time he changed the vampire count's power. Suddenly the lightning stopped crackling, and a dangerous sensation emanated from Victor's body as he stared at Leonardo. Give me your head. His voice came out like the demonic roar, and in the blink of an eye he disappeared. Shit. Leo quickly created a shield in front of him. The shield did protect him, but he was still blasted away from the force. Single quote. How many times did he attack in that split second? I couldn't see it. He saw that his clone had long disappeared and decided to focus his power on defense. Boom, boom, boom. Several hits were landing on his shield, and his shield was breaking at a very fast rate. The attacks were primitive, as Victor was only using his lightning claws, and making several cuts on his shield. Crack, crack, realizing that his shield wasn't going to hold any longer. Fuck, he roared in rage, and his power exploded, sending Victor flying backwards. Taking advantage of this moment, Leo jumped towards Victor and attacked him. The world slowed down, and at the moment when Leo's golden blade would reach Victor, the man literally straightens his position in the air, and defended himself with the Odachi blade that was once in his hand. Clang! The sound of two blades struck was heard. Fast. From Leo's perspective, Victor, at insane speeds, corrected his position and defended. If it hadn't happened in front of him, he wouldn't even have believed it. Victor brandished his blade, aiming to strike. In a desperate struggle, Leo quickly formed a golden shield around himself. As the blade approached the shield, the familiar impacting tone didn't appear. Instead, Victor's blade passed through Leo's shield like a hot knife through soft butter. Fuck. Leo, realizing he wouldn't be able to dodge it, made a decision, putting his hand in front of the attack, and slash, sacrificing his arm. Rumble. His severed arm exploded with the power of lightning and sent Leo flying away. Adjusting his position in the air, Leo looked around confused but couldn't see Victor. Where is he? Having the opportunity to breathe, he wasted no time and healed his wound. He looked at his arm, and soon a new arm was created on the spot. He's too fast, I can't see shit. Anna complained, irritated and at the same time surprised. Honestly, you can't measure this man by normal standards. In addition to being a progenitor, he has the power of the 3 strongest count houses. He is very unusual. I see. That way, he sacrificed all his strength, and put it in speed and in power. But, does he still have strength? Scathach thought as she looked up above the clouds. She was trying to understand what she was seeing but still had no idiom, however. Quote. Wah, ha 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 ha. Scathach began to laugh crazily. As expected, it's always fun to be around him. Quote. Quote. Following Scathach's gaze, people looked up, and their eyes widened in shock. Father is cool. Ophus's eyes gleamed. Rumble, rumble, priest. Victor's voice resounded in the sky. Leonardo looked around for Victor. Pray to your god. He looked around confused. Rumble, rumble, rumble. You're going to need his mercy. All the clouds started to glow golden, they were completely charged with lightning. Leo looked at the sky, noticing the strange change. And as if Victor were a god of storms, all the clouds gathered in one place, and soon a massive giant blade of lightning was created. What the fuck? He's got to be kidding. Sasha spoke while squeezing Ophus a little. Oh, sorry, he's just being Victor. Ruby and Scathach flashed a small smile. Don't look away. Victor tightened his grip on his Odachi's handle. Don't think about breathing. He positioned himself in the air. Gulp. Leo swallowed hard, and positioned himself in the air. His power began to increase, and soon golden armor wrapped around his entire body, and his golden wings grew even bigger. Don't think about blinking. He tightly gripped the 2 golden swords and focuses all his power on the swords. Because the moment you blink. Rumble. Rumble.freewebnovel.com. The lightning around him began to glow brighter, the clouds around the massive blade began to compress to the normal size of Victor's Odachi. You will die. Leo didn't hear Victor. He blinked, and before he could see, feel, or realize, Victor was in front of him. Rumble. With a war cry, he pushed his body beyond limits and reacted, swinging both swords towards Victor. The moment the blade was covered by clouds of lightning from Victor, and Leo's golden blade clashed. An explosion of unbelievable proportions blasted out. Boom. Chapter 347. Hunting Day, Hunter's Day. Looking at the monitor with a serious look, James felt quite apprehensive about the outcome of the battle. Quote. Sigh. This impatient man, he didn't wait for my subordinates. And in the end, he ended up in this pathetic state. Picking up the phone, he was going to call his friend, but he stopped midway. They are vampires, they'll be able to pick up my voice. He walked over to a table and picked up a device, put it in front of his cell phone, and then called his friend. Quote. I have a question. A man who had only half his body left, spoke. Oh, is he still alive even after the right half of his body disappeared? Victor looked at the man's severed region. His body was not expelling blood, or vital organs, but a kind of golden energy, as if he was made of energy. Single quote. Don't tell me. The man looked into Victor's eyes. Did you use 100% of your power? Quote. What you think? Victor's smile widened. As expected, he closed his eyes a little while flashing a small smile. You are a damn monster. That's what people say. Suddenly the sound of a telephone ringing was heard by everyone. Ignoring everyone, Leonardo took the phone out of his right pocket, and put it to his ear. Leonardo, back off. Quote. Are you sure? Yes. Okay. Leonardo continued to look at Victor. It was a good fight, Count. Next time, I'll make sure not to hold back, I'll wipe you off the face of Earth. Do you think you can run away? He asked curiously. Since when did I say I was here? He spoke with a smile as his body began to fade into golden light. The only thing left was a phone he was using. Victor approached the phone, and picked it up, but the moment he picked up the phone self-destructed. Quote. Victor narrowed his eyes seeing this, and that's when he understood. As expected, from the beginning, he was a clone. Because of that, his body felt weird. Making a mental note about the incident, Victor looked around, and saw that there was no one else, just the yokai that was forgotten by everyone, but not by Victor. 30 seconds. Scathach appeared beside Victor as she warned him. Yes. Victor nodded his head, I'll go get an individual. Victor disappeared, leaving a trail of lightning, and appeared in front of the yokai. Please give me a quick death. Even if I ask you to, you won't grant my request, right? Ha 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 tilde. Sigh. The yokai visibly sighed. Quote. Death. This is a blessing for you, I have other plans for you. What do you mean? Oh, have you already forgotten the fate of your vampire friend? Victor's smile grew. Quote. Fuck. Nura's face darkened. Please become my meat bomb, I would be so grateful. Victor spoke with an extremely sincere face, and an innocent voice, but his words were anything but innocent. I have no choice from the start. He spoke in a heavy tone. Exactly. Some hours later. World of the gods, Shinto mythology. A crow dressed in priest's robes was flying to a large mountain in a rather hurried way. This is bad. She is here. Arriving at the top of the mountain, the crow ignored everyone and quickly flew towards the structure. Without showing the least respect for the place, the crow invaded the residence, and knelt on the ground. What is happening? The voice of a woman speaking ancient Japanese was heard. Lady Yomi, Master Tsukuyomi, I'm sorry for my lack of manners, but we have a big problem. The crow spoke as it looked up, and saw only a kind of screen that covered the appearance of two people. We know. The woman's voice echoed through the place. Scathach Scarlet is here. A man's majestic voice resounded through the place. And she is together with the new count. The man continued. Quote. I'm afraid to say that that's not our only problem. The crow's face darkened. He pulled a talisman from his pocket, and threw it into the sky. The talisman glowed, and soon the image of the mortal world was seen. As we speak, everyone responsible for the incident involving the two children is being pursued. What do you mean by everyone? Everyone, Lady Yomi. No one is being spared. Witches, vampires, demons, yokai, humans, werewolves, all beings who somehow helped to spread the information, or who wanted to somehow benefit from this situation are being hunted. The image changed again, and showed a yokai's quarters. Suddenly, two shadows came out of the ground, and two voluptuous women with long black hair appeared and attacked the yokai. When the yokai fell into unconsciousness, he was sucked into the shadows, disappearing along with the two intruders. The image changed again, and this time it showed a group of humans. Suddenly, a flash of golden lightning appeared, and all these groups of humans disappeared. The image changed again, and a blonde woman accompanied by a woman with demon wings were hunting demons themselves. Quote. The two beings watched these events in silence. While the woman was visibly uncomfortable, the man didn't react, it was as if he already knew everything. Quote. Tsukuyomi-sama knows something, the woman asked. The gods tried to trap this group in the reverse world, but they easily escaped with the powers of Clan Alioth. Even without the powers of Clan Alioth, Scathach Scarlet herself could open a rift back to the mortal world, he replied in a neutral tone. Quote. The woman narrowed her eyes. She realized that when he said, gods, he was also talking about himself. What should we do, Tsukuyomi-sama? The crow asked. Nothing. So far, no god has been harmed or will be harmed. The Council of Gods has decided not to intervene any more than necessary. They judged that a fight with Scathach Scarlet would only end in more destruction than we could handle. After all, she is in our territory. The gods weren't afraid of dying. The reason for this is that they couldn't, and according to reports, the gods also didn't hear any news whether the enemy had any kind of godslayer weapon. The very existence of weapons like this was a myth in the mortal world, but the gods knew they existed. They are scarce, but they definitely exist, and only these weapons are capable of killing an immortal like a god. And the enemy is not causing chaos in the human world. They were just targeting supernatural beings, and small groups of humans who were involved with the supernatural world. And those small groups of humans meant little to the gods. After all, humans bred like rabbits. But you tried to trap them in the reverse world? Yomi asked. We were buying time to evacuate all the lesser gods scattered across Japan. Quote. The woman didn't know what to do when she heard what he said. She calmly watched her husband, and saw his usual calm demeanor, but she could also see something that only she could. Fear. He was afraid. He could hide it very well from his servants, but he couldn't hide it from his wife. Fortunately, no god had any direct involvement. His face darkened as he realized something. Quote. What happened? Inari is directly involved with this incident. Did she do something? Not her. Her subordinate, a nine-tailed fox named Kurama. Quote. So she's safe. Quote. Tsukuyomi, for the first time, looked at his wife, and said. Beings that had no direct involvement are being hunted. What do you think will happen to a being whose subordinate is one of the main people involved in this incident? Quote. Yomi's face darkened. Common sense didn't apply to these beings. His only goal is revenge, and he doesn't care if Japan has to burn for him to get it. There is no mercy or chance for negotiation. She thought he was talking about Scathach. Alucard, the youngest vampire count in history, and probably the only vampire count who has almost the same influence as the king of vampires himself. Is he that important? Genji, Inari's subordinate, went to Nightingale and he came back with his tail between his legs when he visited that man, and you remember the recent incident involving the yokai. How could I forget? Economic sanctions, despite lasting a few hours, were quite severe for our market. She answered. He was responsible for that incident. Quote. Wah, does he have that much influence? Influence enough to command the other vampire counts? Quote. Tsukuyomi's silence was all Yomi got from her husband. And his own silence was confirmation for Yomi's questions. Yomi was silent and started thinking about this matter. Tengu, pass on my orders. Tsukuyomi suddenly spoke up. Yes. The Tengu lowered his head. Tell Inari about this conversation, and ask her not to leave the world of the gods. Quote. And if she leaves the divine world, tell her she's on her own, the gods won't intervene. Yes. The Tengu waited for any more orders from Tsukuyomi, but all he gained was the man's silence. Just that, he won't do anything about the yokai dying. The Tengu thought. Quote. That's all, go ahead. Yes. He didn't respond as motivated as before. Yomi stopped thinking, and looked at her. Husband, are you going to abandon the yokai? Yes. His reply was short and cruel. He turned to face his wife. He is cleaning up this filth from Japan, I should be grateful to him. Quote. Yomi narrowed her eyes a little. She didn't like the man's tone, after all, she was a yokai herself. Seeing his wife's mood and face, he spoke. Protect your Tengus, when that vampire is satisfied with his carnage, the Tengus will be quite useful. Quote. In the end, am I just a tool? Don't wallow in useless sentimentality, and don't play the saint. From the beginning, this relationship was a mutually beneficial one. You and your clan gain the protection of the gods, and become the messengers of the gods, and we use your clan members to watch over humans and supernatural beings. She didn't know what to say. This is the relationship you proposed thousands of years ago. It wasn't me who came down to the mortal world, looking for you. It was you who came looking for me. Tsukuyomi got up. Don't forget my orders. He disappeared in a white light. And all that was left in the room was Yomi. Quote. I thought the thousands of years together would soften his heart, but he still remains the same arrogant god. The same prejudiced god who hates yokai. Yomi knew that the man only married her by order of the gods, council, specifically speaking by order of Amaterasu. If it weren't for that, he wouldn't have even married her, and even after thousands of years, the man never touched her because he was disgusted. Single quote. Sigh. I thought his heart would fail when I made that expression, but he's quite stubborn. She sighed to herself. Well, at least my clan will be safe here. The woman got up and two crow wings appeared behind her. She went through a small door hidden behind where she was, and flew towards somewhere. A few more hours later. Kurama, Inari, Yuki, Genji, and Fukuyo, a nine-tailed fox who has the remaining noble vampires of Japan. Victor spoke aloud as if remembering his targets. And the hunters, General Leonardo, Jimmy and Thomas. Even after fighting Leonardo, Victor did not ask Scathach for any information. The reason for this was because he didn't have to. The woman would say something if she wanted to. The two understood each other well enough to know that they shouldn't interfere with each other's prey. Currently, the group was somewhere on the outskirts of Tokyo, in a very luxurious building. Yes, they weren't trying to hide. Next to him were Ophis, Nero, Sasha, Scathach, Roxanne, and Natalia. Nero was having her head petted by Victor. She was a little annoyed that he had turned her into a full vampire, but was happy that she no longer felt the weakness in her body that she'd always had. She was also getting comfortable with the caress on her head, but that was something she'd never say out loud. She was in a very complicated state. Ruby had actually been back to Nightingale for a few hours. She couldn't contain her enthusiasm to research the two hybrids she'd received from Victor. On his other side were Alexios, Jean, and Anna. These are all the names of the individuals involved in this incident. This was easier than I expected. Scathach spoke as she touched her chin. Quote. You may not know it, but the supernatural beings of Japan fear you, Countess Scathach. But I did not do anything. Quote. Alexios' face visibly trembled. Jean and Anna wore amused smiles. Killing all the Onmyo mages, and causing a great massacre 500 years ago, a night that the beings of Japan dubbed the Crimson Nightmare. Did I do something like that? Yes. Oh, cool, anyway. She turned and looked at Victor, who had Ophis sitting on his shoulder and grabbing his neck. She was refusing to part with Victor since the man stopped fighting. Now, what are you going to do? You have all the information on your desk, and the stream of supernatural beings being captured by your maids is still going on. Scathach had high hopes for what Victor was going to do. Quote. Alexios visibly sighed. Ha. Sasha laughed softly as she looked at Alexios. You of all people should know what Scathach's personality is like. Indeed, my father is just pretending to have misunderstood. Natalia backed up Sasha's words. Why are you against me? Habit. Quote. I see you still hold a little grudge against me. Who told you to go around looking for women? I need a vacation, okay. I am human too, he complained. Quote. Sigh. Natalia didn't complain much because she knew her father's job was very difficult. Am I supposed to be expecting any brothers or sisters soon? Of course not. Alexios looked at his daughter curiously. Why did you ask that? Just checking. From the way you've been active these months, I wouldn't be surprised if I gained siblings in various places on the planet. Oh why, I just had a little break in Hawaii, Philippines, Brazil, and Alabama. Quote. Yes, I wouldn't be surprised if I gained enough brothers and sisters to fill an entire football team. Are you planning to coach a team and play in the Champions League? It's impossible to argue with you. Alexios touched his hand to his brow as if he had a headache. Father, you. Victor turned to face Ophis. Siblings? Not yet. Good. She hugged him. Quote. It's amazing how much they understand each other with just one word. Anna spoke. Their relationship really is like a father and a daughter. It was this relationship I wanted with my children. Sigh. Jean sighed. It's normal. Scathach and Sasha spoke at the same time. Quote. The two looked at each other for a few seconds, then show a small smile as if they have agreed on something. Speaking of which, who are you? Victor asked as he looked at the two women. You're slow, huh? Anna raised an eyebrow in amusement. She was helping this man, yet even then, he never questioned their identity. Well, I had important business, and you were with Scathach, Sue, yes. Hey, do you trust me that much? Scathach flashed a small smile. Is that still a question? Victor smiled the same way she did. Maybe. Her smile changed to a seductive smile. Quote. Anna, Jean and Alexios visibly opened their eyes wide when they saw Scathach's feminine aura explode. Victor flashed a smile that hurt Jean and Anna's eyes. I trust you with my life, Scathach. Scathach's cheek turned slightly red, but not from embarrassment but from something else. I see. Chapter 348. Ophis no longer wants to leave her father's side. Looking at the weather, the two women looked at it with different reactions. Now that I realize, isn't this man divinely beautiful? What the fuck, he's on the same level as me. And I'm a succubus. Instead of being a vampire, is he an incubus? Anna thought wryly. This feeling. Jean suspected something. Jean's eyes glowed gold for a few seconds. She felt a stabbing pain in her body when she did, but ignored it, and soon she had her answer. He was blessed by a god, and cursed by another. And this is souls. From Jean's perspective, she could see thousands of beings around Victor, each of those beings screaming as they held the man's body possessively. Thousands of souls, and he's not freaking out from hearing so many voices. He is indeed a progenitor. Jeanne d'Arc, that was the name of a saint. A saint who'd achieved several feats, and caught the attention of God himself. Even though she had become a vampire, the spark of the woman who was called Saint of Orleans still existed. After all, once a saint, always a saint. And that power still existed within her, a power she'd acquired from God himself. Jeanne d'Arc was not abandoned by God, she was abandoned by her own people. She was abandoned by humans, and the proof of that was the power that was still in her body. Even though she had fallen into the confines of hell and became a creature of the night, the Saint of Orleans' light still shone within her. Even though she became a vampire to get revenge on the humans who betrayed her and put her to the stake, the light of God still shone within her. A divine blessing that allowed her to act as an oracle, and that allowed her to see a person's real condition. A very useful resource for anyone who wanted to become a doctor, or was involved in a war. But just like Adonis, this very power was a contradiction to her current body. If used too much, she would be erased from existence. She was a living contradiction who was only alive because whoever turned her into a vampire was an experienced progenitor vampire. Unlike Adonis who had Aphrodite's blessing, a blessing that only influenced the person's outward appearance. Unlike Adonis who was cursed by Persephone, a curse that slowly attacked a person's existence. Jeanne d'Arc won a blessing worthy of a saint. And even after thousands of years, she was still not exonerated by God from her position as a saint. And this showed that just like humans, God also had his favorites. Master, the woman is moving. Victor looked at Kagaya who suddenly appeared. Hey Tilda, this woman really followed through with her challenge. She's quite persistent. Scathach flashed a small smile. Kagaya, what do you think of that woman? Sasha asked curiously. She has a very similar attitude to my master. I would even go so far as to say that she is like a female version of him. Oh, Victor and Sasha reacted differently. Victor looked interested while Sasha. Sasha's lifeless eyes sent shivers down Kagaya's spine. Sasha looked at Scathach. What? Seeing the older woman's gaze, Sasha felt like sighing, but she knew that when the important time came, Scathach would instinctively make her move. It's one thing for me, Violet, Ruby, my mom and Scathach, as even though we have our little problems, we know each other and we're mother and daughter. Sasha's face turned a little red when she thought in that indecent way, but she was too far from the point of return. Just remembering what she did in the bathtub with her mother and Victor along with Scathach, her face took on new levels of red. But as if she were a bipolar woman, her face darkened and took on a lifeless tone. Yes, us women have no problems because we've basically known each other since we were children, but an outsider. That's a big no. Victor displayed a small smile as he patted Ophis and Nero's head. To say he liked Sasha's attitude would be an understatement, he absolutely loved it. After all, he was just like her too. And despite being a little interested in this woman, it's still too early to say anything. She might be a battle maniac just like him. But she needed to have that special personality that he liked, for him to feel interest, real interest, on another level. Looking at Nero and Ophis, Victor thought about what had happened a few hours ago. When Victor finished the fight, he asked the two little girls to explain what happened in those 7 days, and to hear personally from the little girls what happened. Victor made his own plans. And all his plans revolved around one person. Wrong, his entire plan revolved around the chaos that person will cause. Haruna, a woman Ophis called her mother. That was also one of the reasons he hadn't moved yet. I will not hunt them one by one, I will gather them all in one place. Small preparations were made, he had information that his guests kindly gave him. He had a list of names, all that was left now was to clean everything. In the most painful way possible, of course. Remembering what Scathach said when she heard what Ophis said. That's impossible, this little girl's mother is. Well, this woman must be a relative of hers, something like a sister or daughter. She spoke kindly because Ophis was close, but Victor got the bigger picture. Ophis' mother was dead, that was a fact. Alexios himself confirmed this indirectly. After all, if the woman weren't dead, Vlad wouldn't be acting so strangely. Just remember, you can't kill a god, Victor. Scathach warned him when she saw him moving. I know. Victor flashed a small smile when he heard what Scathach said. He really wasn't trying to kill a god, after all, pain is something much more convenient than death. Looking at her husband's small smile, a smile that seemed quite threatening to some people, Sasha woke up from her threatening inner thoughts and spoke. Not even with my weapons, I'm sure I couldn't kill a god. Sasha spoke up, so don't try anything stupid. Sasha warned him. Ha 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 tilde. Victor chuckled lightly as he stroked Ophis's head. Well, shit, Sasha sighed. She knew her husband too well to know that when he laughed like that, something good didn't wait for his opponent. Alexios, I'm counting on you. Look, I'm only doing this because it's my duty to ensure Ophis' safety until she returns to Nightingale. I know, I'm not your subordinate, okay. I know, Victor replied in the same monotone. Don't misunderstand my intentions, I'm only doing this because. Bonk. Natalia hit her father on the head, and said with an irritated look. Stop acting like a Tsunere and just do it. Fine. Alexios with sheer will opened a circle and walked past him. I will too. Natalia, you must stay. Victor spoke in a surprisingly gentle tone that caught Natalia off guard. Master, I still need you. He smiled. The view of that place is not suitable for her. He thought to himself when he saw Natalia's slightly shocked face. Yes, master. Kagaya, yes. How are my maids? They're doing a good job, although some are a little too excited. Kagaya spoke as she thought of Roberta, Bruna, and Maria who seemed to be competing to capture the most people. They were treating it like a game. Because of this, even Kagaya, who were the most serious, had a headache. Victor's smile grew. It's good that they are excited. It's your fault, master, you spoil your maids too much. Victor did not understand her suffering. Victor chuckled internally when he saw the slight changes in Kagaya's expressions, and he spoke. Coordinate your movements with Natalia, you will be important. When it all starts, I don't want anyone running away. Use your power at full steam, don't hold back. Kagaya's body trembled slightly, and when she bent down and said, yes, master. A big predatory smile could be seen on her face. He is indeed the best. Master, master, Roxanne nudged Victor lightly. He looked at his maid. And me, what do? To be honest, Victor had no idea of Roxanne's ability. He knew she was a world tree, but hadn't the slightest inkling of what powers she possessed. What can you do? I can summon a projection of my real body here, and my darlings can do a lot of things. Roxanne thought as she focused her red eyes on a spot on Victor's body. She was checking her master's internal condition. Good, he's not overloaded, his body has stabilized, and I see that his blood power has improved a lot with the addition of my body. She nodded satisfied. Essentially my capabilities are more aimed at defense. If my guardian were here I could somehow help better. Big guy. Victor facepalmed. How could I forget about that old man? Natalia stand by to go back and get big guy. Yes, before Natalia could respond, Roxanne spoke. No need to bother, unlike other beings, my guardian is essentially a spirit, he doesn't really have a real, physical body, I can invite him anytime. He's a spirit? Victor asked in shock. Even Scathach didn't seem to believe what she was hearing, after all, she'd punched that gorilla, and she clearly felt her punch connect. Yes, in that case, be ready to summon him at any time. Roger. She saluted like a soldier. Kagaya narrowed her eyes a little when she saw Roxanne's attitude. This was not the attitude of a maid, but as her master seemed to like it, she was going to put that aside, for now. Sasha touched her chin, and thought, Ruby will want to know about this. She took her phone out and sent a message. Sasha. Hi Ruby. I have news. Ruby. What? I'm busy. Sasha. Roxanne said that gorilla was essentially a spirit, he had no physical body. Smoked. Sasha. I thought you might like to know. Ruby. RLY. Sasha. Yes. Sasha. Tilde filled down pointing small triangle, tilde. A few minutes of silence pass, and then Sasha saw Ruby typing. Ruby. This changes everything. Ruby. Thanks for the info Sasha less than 3. Sasha. You welcome. Sasha. Zoo. Thinking the conversation was over, Sasha was going to put her phone away, but soon she saw Ruby typing again. And soon she saw a message that turned her completely red. Ruby. As a thank you, I'll help set the mood when it's your first time. Ruby. Sasha. Baka. Filled parallelogram, lower half circle, filled parallelogram. Sasha. I will count on you. Ruby. Leave it to me. Ruby-sama will make sure your insides are blown up in unimaginable ways. Sasha. Somehow, I'm regretting making this decision. Sasha. Ye. Ruby. Don't overthink it. Just enjoy it when the time comes. Sasha. And to think you would get so perverted in just a year and a half. Ruby. In my defense, I spent a year holding back all of my husband's impulses. Ruby. And also, he made me train while promising SNU when it was over. He's very evil tilde. Sasha's face was practically a different color at this point as she read Ruby's messages. For a moment, she even thought that this woman she was talking to wasn't Ruby. After all, it's very different from how she acts in person, but she knew that behind that cold mask, there was a there was Ruby. Feeling her cell vibrate again, she looked at the phone's screen. Ruby. Trust me, you'll be addicted when you try it. Degree. Sasha. I'll count on you then. Sasha wasn't going to lie to herself and say she wasn't curious what Ruby was going to do. Ruby. Leave it to me, I know what I'm doing. Sasha. Yes. Whatever. By the way, I recommend that you come back here soon, and if possible bring Violet with you. Ruby. What happened? And about Violet, I think it would be impossible, she is very busy with things involving her clan. Sasha. I see. Well, a certain girl named Haruna has appeared, and she is a 9-tailed fox. Apparently, she has an attitude quite similar to my husband. Sasha. New girl, an exotic girl, and she's crazy. You can imagine the rest, right? Ruby. Ruby. I'm on my way. No stupid fox will take my husband. Ruby. L. Chapter 349, The Mindset of a Wise King. Passing through the portal, the first thing Alexios heard was several screams of pain. He looked in one direction, and his face darkened. Alexios had never gone straight to hell, but if he was honest, the sight before him looked like a scene straight from its depths. How did he do this in just a few hours? Alexios recalled that when Ophis fell asleep, Victor announced that he was going to a place to have fun, and disappeared for 6 hours, only to return at the exact time Ophis woke up. Alexios killed his nausea, and looked around with a cold stare, and he couldn't help but think. Are his methods more brutal than the Impaler himself? And to think he did it because he was angry. Wait, it doesn't matter if he was angry, this method of torture is not achieved by some young vampire. These methods are only obtained through millennia of experience in extracting information from individuals. Alexios looked at the location of the voice, finding a cell made of ice, where a small yokai was held captive. Please, kill me. Unfortunately, that decision is not in my hands. Alexios turned around, and walked towards a room. He opened his eyes, revealing swirling galaxies replacing the expected whites, iris, and pupil. It's time to get to work. Some minutes later, Alexios, who was working, was suddenly interrupted by a small laugh. He stopped what he was doing and looked towards the wall. Soon, he saw a tall man walking past the wall while he had a small smile on his face. Will it be ready for the event? Yes. Alexios looked at several runes on the walls. It should be all set up before the event. That's nice. Victor nodded in satisfaction. Quote. I'm curious. Victor took his attention away from the strange characters on the wall and looked at Alexios. And he is mildly surprised to see the man with his eyes wide open. Looking at the galaxies in Alexios' eyes, Victor was mesmerized for a few seconds. Why? Quote. Quote. Victor woke up from his stupor. Why what? Why go so far for a child that isn't even your daughter? Quote. Quote. Victor's face distorted slightly. He didn't like Alexios' words. Don't get it wrong, I'm just curious. Quote. Quote. Looking at the man's face, Victor understood that he meant no insult with his words, nor any harm. Understanding that the man did not know how to express himself correctly, he said. From the moment that little girl called me father, I was prepared to burn the world if it meant her smiles would persist even a second longer. Why? She's not even your real daughter. There is no, why? I consider her my daughter, and she calls me her father. Victor flashed a small smile. Does a parent need a reason to protect their children? Quote. Quote. Alexios opened his eyes wide, and soon a memory popped into his head. Alexios was looking at Vlad, who was giving orders to his shadows to protect his children. Master, why order so much protection around your youngest children? They are my heirs, and the youngest is my wife's last in this life. She needs to be protected. They really are different. Alexios closed his eyes, and flashed a small smile. Vlad had an obsession, and a responsibility, to protect what was his. Despite loving his children, for Vlad, his kingdom would always come first. He was a king before he was a father. And this mindset was not wrong. This was the perfect mindset for a ruler. But that's what your most trusted subordinates are for. If Vlad ordered Alexios to look after his kingdom while he went to fetch Ophis, Alexios would do it splendidly, but Vlad wouldn't do it. The reason, despite trusting Alexios a lot, he didn't trust him 100%. If you were to quantify how much Vlad trusted Alexios, Alexios himself would say around 90%. Arrogance, pride, greed, and desire for possession. These emotions sometimes clouded the judgment of the most powerful vampire in existence. Indeed, you are correct. You are indeed correct. Alexios laughed at the end amusedly. If Natalia, his beloved daughter, was in danger, he would do anything to ensure her safety. Not even the gods themselves would be able to stop him. Time is eternal, and it is by my side. He looked at the runes as his eyes that contained a galaxies moved as if several small universes were connecting. I have another question. Quote. You're really curious today, huh? Victor spoke. I never had a chance to talk to you alone. Quote. That's true. Victor nodded. Very well, ask your question. Quote. Imagine this hypothetical situation. I'm listening. Victor looked at Alexios curiously. Alexios looked at Victor while keeping his eyelids closed. You are the king of a country. And you're in a situation where you have to choose between the survival of your kingdom, or the survival of your family. Quote. Quote. Before Victor could open his mouth, Alexios spoke. You can't choose both. The situation is so dire that you would have to make a choice between abandoning your kingdom or abandoning your family. Quote. Quote. Victor was silent, and he really considered Alexios' answer. He imagined himself as a ruler who built an entire empire, and suddenly he had to choose between the empire and his family. And the answer he always arrived at, no matter the situation, was, I would choose my family. Why? If this hypothetical situation became real, and I became a king, I would most likely be ruling for myself. Alexios didn't understand what Victor was getting at. The people serve the king does not serve the people. The king points the way, and it's up to him to lead his people to the promised land. If I were king, I would rule with these principles. But if you abandoned your subordinates, wouldn't that be the same as betrayal? The king himself betraying his subordinates. This is correct. Victor nodded, and his expression didn't change. Because of that, I would always make my intentions clear. I would die for my family, and if the sacrifice of my kingdom and myself was what it took for them to survive, then so be it. Quote. Quote. Alexios looked at Victor with a shocked look. That's not the mindset someone your age should have. Just how much did Scathach break him? Alexios thought for a moment, and soon he understood something. She didn't break him, she cut him free with her training, awakening the warrior that existed within this man. But this mentality, this woman, is she training him to be a king? Or has he had this disposition from the beginning? Despite having several doubts, Alexios felt satisfied with his deduction. He laughed a little and said, "You would make a terrible king." Ha 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 tilde. Victor laughed in amusement. Indeed, indeed. Although if I had a kingdom, this hypothetical situation would never come to pass. Victor's smile widened. Oh, why do you think that? Because, before a situation like this could manifest, I would ask for help. Victor's words caught Alexios off guard. Quote. I would ask for help from my wives, my master, my friends, and from my maids. They are capable women, they would definitely think of something. Quote. You would leave your kingdom's fate in the hands of other people. Of course. After all, they are not just any random people. They are my wives, and my beloved maids. Quote. If Alexios' jaw wasn't still connected to his face, it would have impacted the ground. He was very shocked. And also, as the saying goes, 7 heads are better than 1. Quote. I don't think the saying went like that. Really? Meh, who cares? Ha 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 tilde. Quote. Alexios flashed a small smile when he heard the man's laughter. Indeed, who cares? Alexios laughed, not as hard as Victor, but he did. UMU. It seems you do understand. Victor nodded in satisfaction. A portal appeared beside them, and soon Natalia appeared, accompanied by Maria. Seeing her father laughing with Victor as if he found something very funny, her brain stopped working, and she was paralyzed for a few seconds. What the fuck? Is Victor's madness spreading like a disease? Even to my father. UMU. Victor stopped laughing and looked at the two girls. Oh, you came, Maria. Yes, I knew Master needed me, so I immediately stopped my game with the girls and came. She spoke with a twinkle in her eye. Good. Victor nodded in satisfaction, then said, "Come with me." Yes, Master. Without delay, Maria quickly ran towards Victor and grabbed his arm. Victor started walking towards the exit. He passed close to Natalia and said, "Good job." This chapter is updated by FREEWEBNO vs EL. COM. Quote. Natalia displayed a small smile, but when she was about to follow Victor, the man just pat her head lightly, and said, "Don't come with me, it's for your own good." He smiled kindly. Quote. His gentle smile caught Natalia off guard. That smile with that face is not fair. She complained to herself as she cursed Victor's beauty. Despite being troubled internally, she was also curious why he wouldn't let her go with him. Quote. Looking at this, Alexios couldn't help but display a small smile. For someone who says he would abandon his kingdom and subordinates when it reached a critical point. He's pretty kind, huh? Alexios knew Victor said that because the room next to this one was just very infernal. Natalia might be used to killing, but seeing dismembered bodies, and all kinds of torture wasn't for her. A good example of this was that she was feeling sick at the little massacre that Victor caused when he arrived in Japan. Quote. He would really make a good king. Alexios thought to himself approvingly. He agreed with Victor's mindset that the people serve the king, and not the other way round. Vlad had the same attitude. But the primary difference between Vlad and Victor was that Victor was willing to trust the people close to him. And it's not like Vlad from the start didn't have people he could trust. His wives, for example. If he'd only tried to have a good relationship with them, perhaps Nightingale would be even stronger. After all of Vlad's wives were special in some way, and they were all highly capable. But unfortunately, due to being a millennial man, and a man who practically lived half of his 2,000 years sleeping, Vlad's mentality was left stranded in the customs of the past. Natalia, listen to him. Alexios spoke to his daughter when he saw that she was going to question Victor. You don't want to go into that room. Trust me. Quote. Now Natalia was even more curious, but seeing her father's unusually serious look, she decided to give in and listen to the two men. Wait, was being treated like a child. She's a grown woman for God's sake. Ignoring her feelings of incongruity, she spoke. Okay. Quote. Victor smiled and nodded slightly at Alexios. Alexios smiled too, then turned and went back to his work. Come on, Maria. Yes. Maria was excited. Chapter 350. Welcome to my humble abode. Victor walked along with Maria to the supernatural beings that were trapped in this place. The two casually passed by various screams and sounds of people suffering, their attitudes unchanging as if it were completely natural. This. Torture method, is it Roberta? Maria spoke while looking at a man who had several torture tools dug into his private parts and had a kind of thorn penetrating his back hole. She's brutal. She has certain complications when it comes to the sterner sex. Victor flashed a wry smile since, knowing his maid's past, he understood why Roberta had so many problems with men. Come to think of it, I forgot to move this man to another room. Victor thought to himself. This wing was for the people who directly sought to profit from the situation involving Ophis, either by means of obtaining the daughter of a big shot from the world of politics or by having an interest in the little girl's blood. Of course, there were those like this man who acted with lustful interest, all because of the rumor that the youngest daughter of the vampire king, Vlad Tepes, was unparalleled in beauty even by the standards of noble vampires who were born looking quite attractive. Although it wasn't a rumor anymore. After the recent ambush Ophis suffered, her face was revealed, and at some point, her face was widely circulated in the supernatural community. Victor personally went after the witches who did this, and he captured those witches, and, well, he's done enough to know that the witches would retaliate in the future. After all, witches were well known for protecting all of their members. Even witches who committed crimes on the outside were dealt with personally by the witches themselves in the witch realm. He was already expecting someone important related to witches to show up at his door because of this. Let them come, I'll be waiting. Victor wasn't afraid to fight or to make enemies. He wasn't a coward. Of course, those with lustful interests like the man Roberta tortured were being personally treated by Victor, and they stood behind a door that only Victor, Scathach, or Roberta could enter. After all, few had the stomachs to see what was behind that door. That would be the case for Victor as well, however, through absorbing Adonis memories, he'd become a little numb to this type of scene. You don't run a vampire count clan for thousands of years being a saint, after all. Now, the question remained, how did Victor separate the innocent and the guilty? Let's say that he was putting his charm to good use, and now that his charm was much stronger than before, all it took was for a person to hear his words for them to be coerced into doing something they usually wouldn't want to do. This was definitely a demonic skill. A demonic skill, a demonically useful skill. Master, you're going to use these people. Indeed, they will be your new toys. Victor flashed a small smile. Maria made an uncomfortable face. What's the matter, my maid? Victor asked as he looked into Maria's red eyes. It's just, I'm disgusted to bite these people. But since I know it's for the master's sake, I'll do it. Victor looked at Maria with an incredulous look, and then he laughed softly. Ha 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 tilde. What? She pouted. Victor stroked her head as he said. My beloved maid, you aren't going to make vampire slaves. She looked at Victor with question marks in her head. She didn't understand what he meant, but she was secretly enjoying the caresses on her head. You must make ghouls. Maria opened her eyes in shock as she looked into Victor's violet eyes. Remember that before you became what you are today, you were once a ghoul. But I thought I had lost that ability. You didn't lose it, you just never used it. He flashed a small smile and continued walking along with Maria. My bite works in peculiar ways. That's true. You even managed to eliminate that girl's race, effectively. Making her a full vampire. Correct. Victor nodded in satisfaction. Unlike Nero, you were a ghoul, a subspecies of vampires, but, through my bite. Let's just say you evolved through the hierarchy. Victor explained. But the core of your existence is still a ghoul. So I'm dead. She spoke with a dark expression. Victor showed a small smile and said. You're not dead. But, shish, let me finish. Maria looked at her master. You know about that demon-looking woman, right? Vlad's ex-wife. Correct. She's a demon. Correction, she was a demon, who later became a vampire. Vlad Dracul Tepes, the progenitor of vampires, personally bit that woman and altered her entire existence, but even after being bitten by a progenitor and having her race changed to a vampire, the core of her existence is still a succubus. Core of existence? She asked curiously. Victor looked upwards a little, tilting his head slightly as if thinking of a way to explain. This was the first time he'd tried to explain this to someone, and he was struggling to put it into words. After all, he didn't fully understand how it worked, it was merely an instinctive knowledge that he'd gained when he became a progenitor. Something like, you don't think about raising your hands, do you? Nobody taught you that, you just knew naturally from when you started to exist. His abilities as a progenitor were something like that. He knew what to do but had no idea how to verbally explain it. Example. Before you turned into a ghoul, you were a human. At that time, the core of your existence was 100% human. Then there was the bite without the correct preparations, and you turned into a ghoul. When you turned into a ghoul, your core existence changed from being 100% human to 1% human. And a new attribute was added to the core of your existence. Back then, you were 99% ghoul and 1% human. That 1% was what kept your memories, desires, appearance, and everything you were before. When I bit you, the same thing happened, only this time, the ghoul was the one that decreased and became 1%, equal to the remaining human. My blood filled your existence, effectively turning you into a noble vampire. Quote. Maria made a difficult face as she thought about what Victor had said. Victor gave her time to think, and soon the woman replied. That means the human 1% is what I am myself. These are my memories, my appearance, my desire, everything, Maria, is in that 1%. And the 1% ghoul would be something like the skills I had when I was a ghoul. And now the rest is the 98% of me that is a noble vampire. It's all blended together and gave life to the existence I am today. Victor flashed a small smile and said, it's a little more complicated than that. But you're correct. Then he continued, this change that occurs with the bite is something more fundamental. It's something on the level of souls, not just genes. Quote. A silence fell around, and when Maria saw the door approaching, she asked. Quote. Could Master completely eliminate what made me a ghoul from my body? I don't know, but I think I can. Victor spoke vaguely, as he wasn't sure himself. He had a feeling he could do it, but it would be something incredibly dangerous. After all, it was like you were messing with something that made you what you are. Quote. Maria looked at Victor in silence. Even if I could completely erase the ghoul inside you, I wouldn't. Why? Because it's your story. You were once human, then you were a ghoul, and now you are a noble vampire. All these transformations are part of you, part of being known as Maria. Erasing that would be like effectively erasing a part of your history. Even with Nero, he didn't completely erase the werewolf side of her body because that side was part of the girl's core existence. He didn't know the consequences that would arise from erasing it, considering that he would effectively be erasing something from Nero's existence. All he had was a basic, gut instinct, of how this skill worked, but it was something very vague, and for him to understand more, he would have to use the skill more. Single quote. Maybe I can train this with the prisoners. Victor thought to himself. Quote. Maria opened her eyes wide when she heard what Victor said. I didn't know you thought so much about it. Victor showed a soft smile. It's very dangerous to mess with something delicate like that without knowing anything. Arriving at the door, Victor took the handle and said, you're not dead. You're a noble vampire who was once a human and a ghoul. The remnants of what you once were remain in your soul to this day, and it's those remnants that give you everything you have today. Victor thought of Maria's wire skill as he said this. This ability was something she'd had since she was a hunter, and even after becoming a ghoul and later a vampire, that ability hadn't been lost. It had just been modified by her new self. The ability to turn other beings into ghouls still existed within her. Victor believed that if Maria gave her blood to a being without doing any kind of ritual like common noble vampires, that being would turn into a ghoul. That being wouldn't die because it couldn't stand the vampire's noxious blood. Quote. And for my plan to work, I need your ghoul powers today. He flashed a small evil smile. Soon he opened the door, and the first thing he saw were the innocent supernatural beings. Looking at the terrified faces they had when he appeared, Victor's smile grew very demon-like. Wrong, he smiled as if he was something more evil than a demon, considering the demons he'd captured were scared to death of him. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my humble abode.